Grammy-nominated violinist Christina Day Martinson. She's here with filmmaker Nathaniel Hansen, who's made a documentary about Christina called A Second Movement. It's all ahead on the first hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The Supreme Court has ruled President Trump can temporarily pause protections against deportation for about 500,000 migrants in the U.S. People from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela had been given temporary protected status to avoid war or natural disasters in their home countries. The Supreme Court's decision means the migrants would lose their status to stay in the U.S. legally. A federal appeals court has temporarily restored President Trump's ability to impose his sweeping global tariffs. The president's power had been briefly halted earlier this week by lower court decisions. The tariffs can go forward. But NPR's Danielle Kurtz-Laban reports Trump is creating more tariff uncertainty today with fresh online comments.
Trump had imposed 145% tariffs on Chinese imports, but earlier this month, the countries announced a 90-day deal lowering those tariffs to 30%. And Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods to 10%. In today's post, Trump took credit for that pause and the positive response from global markets. But the president added that China, quote, has totally violated its agreement with us. He ended, so much for being Mr. Nice Guy. Trump did not specify how China had violated the agreement, nor if any immediate steps are planned. Danielle Kurtz-Laban, NPR News.
The Israeli government has approved the establishment of 22 new settlements throughout the occupied West Bank. The announcement comes as the Israeli military continues to increasingly displace Palestinians from their towns and villages. NPR's Hadil Al-Shelchi reports.
The Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz called it a, quote, once-in-a-generation decision that would strengthen the government's hold on the West Bank. Israel captured the territory in the 1967 Mideast War and has built more than 100 Jewish settlements. The international community considers the settlements illegal or illegitimate. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich is a far-right settler and has been calling for the full annexation of the West Bank. His group believes that all of Israel has been given to the Jewish people by God. Rights groups say the recent move by the government deepens the Israeli occupation and hinders prospects of a two-state solution. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
It's been 2 weeks since a group of 10 prisoners escaped a jail in New Orleans. All but 2 of the prisoners have been recaptured. Louisiana State Police Colonel Robert Hodges says officials believe the 2 prisoners are getting help.
Multiple individuals who aided these fugitives after their escape have been arrested. I want to be clear. Anyone who chooses to help the remaining fugitives in any way will be arrested and prosecuted.
That audio is courtesy of WVUE. Authorities are now offering a reward of up to $50,000 for each escaped inmate. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials are down by about 30 points. This is NPR.
Morning with the latest from the GBH Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. If you're planning to take the Mass Pike this weekend, be prepared for some major backups near 128. The Pike will be reduced to a single lane in each direction between exits 123 and 125 in Newton and in Weston as crews make renovations to the 128 interchange. State Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver says the traffic will not be pretty.
Our modeling indicates that if 100% of the traffic shows up, which we don't expect, but if it does, you could see as much as 2 to 3 hours of delay coming through that site. So our messaging has been really strong to the traveling public that if you do not need to be coming through the region this weekend, you should avoid it.
Work in the Pike starts at 9 o'clock tonight, will last through 5 o'clock Monday morning. Another major lane closure is set for June 20th through the 23rd. And the average summer temperatures in Massachusetts have risen by 2 3/4 degrees Fahrenheit in the past 55 years, so says recent data from the researchers at Climate Matters, a nonprofit group of climate scientists and communication experts. Report says the rise in temperatures has led to more frequent and intense heat waves, heightened public health risks, and dangerous conditions for essential workers. Suffolk County, which includes Boston, has experienced the biggest increased warming by 3.3 degrees, outpacing the rest of the state. And 4 other counties, Norfolk, Middlesex, Plymouth, and Worcester, had temperature rises above 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Speaking of degrees, it's 72 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the estate of Joan B. Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help NPR be the model for high-quality journalism in the 21st century. This is NPR.
You're listening to BPR. Andrea Cabral and Shirley Leung in for Jim and Marjorie. The estrogen surge returns. We are live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Great live music in about 30 minutes. Next, Ask the Mayor is June 17th and Ask the Governor is June 25th. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Shirley. Long time no see. I hope you are well.
Yeah, I am. I'm doing well. It's 72 degrees. This is awesome.
It is awesome. So we're going to start our Friday by opening the phone and the text lines, as always, asking you, how much faith do you have in the impact of your dollar as a consumer? Inspired news about big-name corporations warning investors about the perils of public backlash. And we're talking about companies like Walmart, Target, Home Depot. They're noticing the impact of ongoing boycotts over their flip-flopping stances on diversity, LGBTQ, and other programs. We should note that the backlash seems to be coming from both directions. Some just as mad about rainbows during Pride as they are about companies doing away with DEI initiatives. Apparently, it's causing major headaches for some of these poor, helpless mega corporations. Regardless of where you land politically, though, what's clear is that being mindful about where you shop might have more collective sway than previously believed. 877-301-8970, call or text us. Have you been making a concerted effort to only shop at stores that reflect your values and beliefs? Costco's sales are up since they've doubled down on diversity. Or are you more of a mind that it doesn't make a big enough difference to matter? And how much joy do you derive from hearing that Elon Musk's Tesla stock
That's right.
saw a 71% drop in profits since his dark MAGA makeover? Again, the number to call is 877-301-8970. Call us or text us. And before we do that, I just want to follow up on the breaking news that you may have just heard in the news segment that the Supreme Court has allowed Trump to revoke humanitarian parole. You might remember that about a month ago, they allowed him to revoke temporary protected status for migrants. There are 2 different programs. Humanitarian parole has been around for decades. It was used in the 60s. Cubans, Southeast Asians. It's used currently for Ukrainians, Nicaraguans, and so forth, Venezuelans. But they are letting him... He had been stopped at the federal district court level. He had been stopped by a judge from revoking it. The appeals court had upheld the district court judge's ruling, and somehow the SCOTUS, since we don't have any explanation for the reasoning, and we may never, have stepped in and decided that those 2 lower courts somehow got it wrong, and they're allowing him to do it, at least in the short term. There'll probably be a full hearing on the issue sometime later, but never let it be said that one cruelty is enough.
Yeah, I mean, this could have a big impact here. We have a lot of Haitian immigrants here. So I'm hoping that there's more, legal barriers or legal obstacles that can be put up to slow down this rollback of this initiative.
That would certainly be good. I mean, humanitarian parole, for people who don't know, is you have to apply on an individual basis. This isn't an en masse kind of thing. And it's when you're fleeing a war-torn country or a country where violence is otherwise lethal to you and your family, and you have to apply. The people who are already here on humanitarian parole followed all of those rules and relied on the federal government to make good on its promise. So to take that rug out from under them right now is particularly cruel.
Andrea, should we go back to shopping now?
Yeah, I kind of hated to bring down our shopping segment with that news, but it was breaking news. But you know what? This is a very big deal, and the market basket thing has really sort of highlighted it for people about where you spend your money and why you spend your money there, particularly when it's costing you more to spend, to buy the things that you want.
Right. I mean, the last 2 days, this region has been consumed by the prospect of another potential employee walkout at Market Basket, a beloved chain. Many of us remember the summer.
You covered this the first go-round.
Yeah, summer 2014, where Arthur T. DeMoulis, the beloved CEO, he was ousted by his cousin, also named Arthur S., or AKA the Bad Arthur. And so there was a successful employee walkout. Customers boycotted Market Basket for about 6 weeks. Do you remember the empty? I remember the empty shelves, right?
Oh, yeah.
The delivery stopped. Employees didn't restock the shelves, empty shelves, and then people went to shop at Star Market, at Wegmans, somewhere else. And what was really remarkable, because they sided with RDT, the good Arthur, because he kept prices low and he had generous employee benefits, and they wanted to stand by him. And so you would go to these, kind of very quiet Market Baskets, and they would stick receipts, right, that they from Stop and Shop and Shaw's, that to just show that, look, we went elsewhere, and so please bring back RDT. And remarkably, after 6 weeks, the board brought back RDT, and Arthur S. and his side of the family got bought out. But now there's a new skirmish within the family between RDT and his three sisters. And so everybody is weighing in on, the shoppers are saying, do I continue to shop at Market Basket, or do I take my business elsewhere when the time is right?
Well, that's what we definitely want to hear from you about, particularly if you're a Market Basket shopper, a long-term or short-term shopper, but particularly the long-term folks, because there is a whole atmosphere, a whole environment around being a Market Basket shopper. But it'll be interesting to see if the worm has turned at all in terms of how people feel in the cash crunch that many are feeling right now. I saw on the local news coverage, I think it was Channel 10, they were interviewing some folks out in the parking lot, and one woman said, if they keep the prices low, she didn't seem to be at all certain that people would go to bat for RDT again, but that was just one person. So,
right. I mean, the big difference between 2014 and 2025 is we are now in we're still a very high inflation era.
Right.
And so it might be more difficult, more pain at the pocketbook to go to a competitor now. You might need to stay at Market Basket. You can't afford to shop anywhere else.
Right. Let's see what Ryan from Melrose has to tell us. Hi, Ryan.
Hi there, Andrea. Hi, Shirley. Just
Hi, Ryan.
Calling in to share that I've been doing both Amazon and Target boycotts since end of January, and I've, of course, do not want to support companies that are getting rid of DEI as part of a member of a marginalized community myself. And also on the flip side, I would say it's been a really positive thing as I've been able to help some more local small businesses, more people of color owned, queer owned kind of places, and just finding little fun things that I might not have found if I just kept going on Amazon or Target. So that's basically what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for the call. I'm the same way. I canceled my Amazon membership. I don't shop at Target or Walmart. I do it.
Wow. No, my husband still has kept our Amazon, our Prime account, but I've pretty much scaled back shopping at Target. And what was surprising, and Ryan, I don't know if you felt this too, it was actually kind of easy. It was kind of easy not shopping at Target for a few months. I mean, I think I broke down when my 12-year-old had a science project, a science fair project, and he needed at the last minute Play-Doh, and so I had to run out to Target and get Play-Doh. But I was pretty good. I didn't need to be there for 2 months.
Ryan, did you find it difficult?
I mean, a little bit at first. You'd say, I need this certain item. Where am I going to get it? But you just dig in a little bit and do a little research either online or kind of in your local, Main Street. Like Melrose has some great businesses, and you find the things you need you can end up finding, and then you end up not buying the junk, say like at Target, and those like $1, $3, $5 bins when you first walk in. So I think all in all, I end up probably actually saving money.
Oh, that's great.
That is great. And shopping local businesses is always good. We have some of our texters are weighing in. One anonymous texter says, ironically, I bought flip-flops at Target last week.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That is good. And another one says, I'm fierce when I commit to boycott. I boycotted Walmart in 2000 based on how they treat their employees. I haven't set foot in a Walmart in 25 years. If it makes a difference or not, at least I can be happy that I live by my values.
Wow, that's commitment. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, I've also, so I pulled back on Target and I don't really shop at Walmart, but I have increased my spending at Costco, which is doubled down to its commitment to DEI. And I think Costco has seen an increase in revenue and profits as a result.
Significant. Peter from Groton, longtime Market Basket shopper.
Yeah, and longtime Boston Public Radio listener, and it's a pleasure to have you guys there. And I hope Jim's enjoying his day off. Hey, just wanted to weigh in on the dynamic that's going on. It's unfortunate. It's internal, I guess, Greek tragedy more than anything else. But the success of the company under RDT is undeniable, and I know a lot of pundits in business schools and stuff have weighed in on this and said that the board's making a really bad decision, and they need to work out their dynamics. But it's just incredible that they're doing this, given what happened back in 2014.
Do you will you continue to shop there, or do you see, as part of the Market Basket crowd, the shopper crowd, what kind of dynamics are you seeing in that group?
Yeah, it's painful. I think it's not quite as clear cut as it was back in 2014, where there was, clearly an identifiable, bad Artie and a good Artie, and the alignment sort of along those lines. But I think there are enough people that would support RDT, and I think unfortunately, I don't think if he's at the helm anymore, then a lot of the business practices that have allowed them to be successful and also allowed them to pay off that $1.6 billion debt. I think that would fall by the wayside, and I would be concerned that they would slip back into traditional corporate practices and maybe start eliminating some of the benefits, cranking up some of the prices again. So I'd be willing to go to boycott again or to go through that again.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the call.
I think right now. Thanks, Peter. I mean, I've been, I covered the story in 2014. I'm covering it now, and it's a little muddier this time, what exactly is happening. Right now, RDT has been put on paid administrative leave, and so two of his children who work at the company. It seems to me we don't know more about, it's true, RDT is run, the company is more successful than ever.
And you rarely see a board act adversely to a CEO who is experiencing that level of success.
Right, but as I understand it, some of the issues are over succession. RDT can't be there forever. He's 70, and so I think part of the discussion is who's going to take over. Not tomorrow, but in the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's a real life succession drama. I think is playing out, and the board. It's not, as Peter mentioned, it's unclear who the villain is in my eyes, because the board, from their point of view, they said we want more information from RDT. He plays his cards too close to the vest. We want basic information about budget and operations, and so. To me, the last time there was also a fight between the board and RDT, and now there continues to be one, and so they never really work. He obviously does not like obviously doesn't like anyone telling him what to do, right. And so, anyways, we have another call, right? Georgia from Millbury.
Hi, Georgia.
Hi. Hello. I love your show. Thank you for being there. I am a disabled person. I've got mobility challenges, and I have to keep my Amazon, my Walmart Plus, my Target 360, because they give me discounts on the programs because I'm disabled. And I I just physically can't do the shopping like that.
That's perfectly understandable, Georgia. I mean, I think that that's part of the reason why those efforts by those companies are so successful is because the ability to get groceries delivered, regardless of the reasons that you need it, is very important. But when you absolutely need it, you should be able to take advantage of it. There are other ways, I think, to show disagreement with a company. It doesn't have to be a boycott, but the more important thing is that you're able to get what you need in a timely fashion and when you need it, and especially if you can't make it out to the stores yourself.
Georgia, maybe you can write a note. Every time you buy something, you could write a note. You could buy something. Yeah, you let them know that you're unhappy with what they've done with DEI. But you can still. I understand in your situation, it's very difficult for you to get out and buy goods, and this is the best way to do it. That's completely understandable.
You know, a lot of our texts.
Living on a fixed income, the discounts that they give me, I wish that other organizations would do it. I avoided Walmart like the plague to support local markets and such when I was able to work. But, you know, I'm forced because of my limited income. And therefore, I hear what you're saying about leaving those feedbacks, and I definitely do that.
Thank you for your call, Georgia. Cindy from Grafton texts to say it's cowardly of Target to abandon DEI words, but this HR pro knows that they always hire those in the neighborhood, and that would be people of color and from South Asia, South America, in my area. Boycotts hurt those employees more than the shareholders, and she says, and the Walmart across the street is packed with shoppers. She actually raises a couple of good points, Sue from Grafton does. That the hiring usually is local.
That's right.
So it does depend. And I think for me, the point is that they would abandon those efforts as they are written, that they abandon the principles but continue to hire locally is cowardly. I think she makes a really good point about that. And in some cases, it won't make a difference in how many shoppers show up.
We have quite a few people who are voting with their pocketbooks. I mean, look at Woody from UPS driver. He says, I canceled our Prime account and deleted the app. It's amazing how much less I spend with Amazon.
You do spend less.
That's true.
Definitely.
And as for our groceries, Market Basket and Costco are our go-to stores. We also have Sue in Fairhaven. Another boycotter. I'm fully boycotting Amazon, Target, and Walmart. I found plenty of other local and online options. And again, the same sentiment. I also realized I didn't actually need a lot of the crap I'm buying. But a Market Basket boycott isn't an option. The prices at Stop and Shop near me are ridiculous, and the variety is limited.
It is empowering for people, both in terms of that you spend less money, but also that you feel as though you're doing something. Do we have time? Do we have to go to a break? Or
Nope.
do we have time for John? John in Acton, what have you got for us?
Second call, long-time listener, love the show.
Thanks for calling in.
I am boycotting Whole Foods because of Jeff Bezos.
Oh, wow. How long have you been doing that?
Ever since he canceled the editorial supporting Kamala Harris.
So did I. That's when I stopped shopping there, too.
And it's because Amazon owns Whole Foods now. I mean,
That's right.
For years they've owned Whole Foods.
I'm with you, John.
I shop instead at Wegmans, which not only has lower prices and higher quality than Whole Foods, but also hires special needs individuals as cashiers, and I strongly endorse that policy. It's a breath of fresh air.
Good to know. Thank you, John. Thank you for the call. Where are we break-wise?
We still have time.
Okay, good. So let's
look at this now. Now here's someone, Mary from Rosendale. She gives another side of the story. Target has supported our city's citizens and has opened stores in Boston. That kind of represents Target's support of diversity better than words in a document. Some larger corporate chains have closed their city stores. I mean, that's a really good point.
It is a good point, but it does make you wonder why you can't do both. If you're that large and that powerful, why can't you put your money where your mouth is? Clearly there's this idea that what you see in the neighborhood indicates that there are some diversity efforts. But if you're as big as Target or as big as Home Depot, why can't you say it and say to the president, how we hire or who we hire is none of your business?
Yeah, I mean, Target, Walmart, Amazon, all of them should be able to stand by their values like Costco. And I mean, one theory is that they didn't really believe in it in the first place, right?
Right.
And this is just the reason to abandon their DEI principles.
All right.
So I guess we can go to. You want to go to break?
Yeah, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll see how much time we have left for more texts and calls.
So, yep, and we're asking you if you have an impact in being a conscious consumer. You're listening to BPR and 89.7 GBH live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The Trump administration has fired hundreds of people at the Voice of America. The global broadcaster has been a hallmark of American soft power for decades.
As VOA steps away, you're basically leaving Africa and parts of Asia, Middle East, Latin America to China and Russia, which are increasing their budgets.
That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Furniture Consignment Gallery, offering pre-owned home furnishings in their locations in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth during their Memorial Day event. Details online at FurnitureConsignment.com. And North Shore Music Theater, presenting the Broadway musical Waitress, with new music by singer-songwriter Sarah Bareilles. On stage at Bill Haney's North Shore Music Theater from June 3rd through June 15th. Ticket information at nsmt.org.
Welcome back to BPR. I'm Andrea Cabral. I'm here with Shirley Leung, and we are both here for Jim and Marjorie. We are live at the Boston Public Library. We're streaming also at youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to listeners about the impact of their dollars and where they spend them, asking about your journey to be a conscientious consumer. Are you boycotting certain stores, companies, or other organizations because they don't align with your values? Let's now bring Market Basket back into the mix. Remember, there were huge boycotts in 2014. Are we going to see the same now, or are people tapped out, overspent, have other priorities? Give us a call or text us, 877-301-8970. Again, that's 877-301-8970. We have an anonymous texter that said that the last time this texter shopped at Walmart was 2015, and it was when the texter was in China. The texter says, I figured in that case I was shopping local.
Oh my goodness. Listeners are so hilarious, right? So I wrote a column about Market Basket, I think I posted yesterday, and I have to admit, the first time I was a bit skeptical that an employee walkout and the customer boycotts would work. And I worried that it would drive Market Basket into bankruptcy, mm-hmm. and it did. It almost did. And I was skeptical, and I was wrong. I mean, Market Basket came back bigger than ever, just as popular. And but I really wonder about this time. It's such a different era. 2025 seems so different from 2014. I don't know if you can do this, ask people to do this twice, right?
But that is the real question, is who you are, at least who people perceive you to be, hopefully who you are as a company. What kind of long-lasting value does that have in the mind of a consumer? And that, I think we're going to see that play out in real time with Market Basket.
Yeah, we're to see if people are, I think I'm struck by just the initial round of reporting. It sounds pretty divided, Some people are like, yes, I will boycott again. And others are like, I'm done. I'm exhausted, and I need to put food on the table and not break the bank. That's my bigger concern right now. We have James Melrose, a former employee at Market Basket. James, welcome to BPR.
Hi, James.
Hello.
First time, long time. Used to listen to you guys on my break when I worked at Market Basket.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Fabulous.
What did you do there?
Work at the store. So I was a cashier. I started there when I was 14.
Oh, wow.
And I worked there until about midway through college. And I got a scholarship every year of college from Market Basket. They take great care of their employees.
That's great.
I worked at the store right down the street from Mr. DeMoulis' house.
Oh, wow.
And they used to have me clean up the litter in front of his driveway. And the man just did that, not because he told them to or because they had to, but because they wanted to take care of the man who was taking care of them. And this was in the Merrimack Valley, and I feel like people have a different perspective there. They've been shopping there 50 years, and maybe shoppers at the newer stores in Rhode Island and Maine might not have that sort of relationship with the company. So I do think the employee loyalty is there, and we could see like a walkout or something like that. But at the same time, the company's expanded so much. I don't know if the customer base is the same as it was in 2014.
So it's less of a sort of a family feel in terms of the customer base than back when the first boycott happened.
I mean, James makes a really great point.
Yeah.
You know, there are 90 stores now, over 30,000 employees. You know, the company started, more than 100 years ago with its first store by Greek immigrants in Lowell. I think it was RDT's grandparents, right, that started the first store in Lowell, and so they're a long way from that. I mean, you're absolutely, James. Also, the other thing that's legend and lore about Market Basket is that a lot of young people like yourself, teenagers, you learned a lot, right, working as how to be an employee or how to be a good worker at Market Basket, right?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, it's probably the only place nowadays that your first job you're wearing a shirt and tie every single day, and now I do that in my normal office job every day. So I can trace being comfortable in a customer service environment, being comfortable interacting with people. I can trace that all back to working at Market Basket. Wow. I even learned inventory management when I was working in the grocery department.
Wow. James, what do you do now? How old are you now?
I work for the state. I'm 25.
Oh, wow. Okay. Still very young. So that wasn't that long ago working at Market.
He took a good skill set into the state government.
I actually used to intern at GBH when I was in college.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Thank you so much
thanks for
the
calling.
Call. One of our anonymous texters says, so long as you are a consumer in a capitalist system, you'll be supporting one form of exploitation or another. It's not the individual actions that matter. It's collective action against capitalism and towards some other system.
Ooh, that's good.
Giving you the 30,000-foot view, which you actually need to take from time to time. And one of our other texters says, my values, quote unquote, when shopping are to buy what I need or want for a good price as easily as I can. I don't see any value in consumer boycotting. I would say that the vast majority of our texters seem to see the value in boycotting. We've got a bunch of people talking about a variety of places, every place from it's the Targets and the Walmarts, but there's also Starbucks. There's a texter who said that they've been boycotting Starbucks and a few other places ever since they stayed in Russia after Russia invaded Ukraine.
Wow. Yeah. Do we have time for one more caller? Gwen from Worcester?
I think so. Very quickly. Gwen from Worcester in a minute, less than a minute.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say that I have recently started shopping at Market Basket because it's more affordable. I'm very concerned with the bill that they're getting ready to pass because they're talking about cutting food stamps. I can't make it now from month to month. And if they cut it, it's going to make it that much more difficult for me to continue getting by month to month. I live on Social Security month to month, and I never make it. So these new cuts are scaring me to death, and I'm sure it's scaring a lot of the elderly community.
Thank you very much for the call. And he makes a great point.
Yeah, I know
He's
he does.
exactly right about that. That's on top of mind for most people particularly seniors.
So we're out of time, so thanks to everyone who called and texted. Coming up after a quick break, it's time for Live Music Friday, courtesy of Grammy-nominated violinist Christina Day Martinson. You're listening to BPR and 89.7 GBH live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Dean in Hamilton with Compass Real Estate. Their website includes listings of homes from Hingham to Duxbury, as well as information about each South Shore community. More about the team and current listings at deanandhamilton.com. And Bay State Learning Center, a welcoming alternative to traditional schooling, committed to reimagining education as an adventure, where growth, purpose, and possibility lead the way. More at baystatelearning.org. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. BostonSpeakers.org. Enjoy the classic Cole Porter musical, Kiss Me Kate, starring Tony Award winner Stephanie J. Block in her West End debut. Don't miss great performances tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Welcome back to BPR. Andrea Cabral and Shirley Leung here for Jim and Marjorie. We are live at the Boston Public Library. We're also streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Welcome to another round of Live Music Friday. I have to say, I love Live Music Friday. Today's is courtesy of the fabulous Grammy-nominated violinist Christina Day Martinson. She's here ahead of a show on June 17th at GBH's Fraser Performance Studio. It's open to the public. You can find tickets by going to gbh.org/events. The June 17th show is also going to be filmed as part of an upcoming documentary about Day Martinson, directed by award-winning filmmaker Nathaniel Hansen, who is also with us. The project is called A Second Movement, and it follows her life story from her beginnings in Saskatchewan, Canada, through career highs, her motherhood journey, and all the way up to today. I have to tell you, I've been fortunate enough to see an 11-minute clip of this movie. I am completely hooked and can't wait to see the entire thing. Martinson is the Associate Director and Concertmaster of Boston Baroque and the Assistant Concertmaster of the Handel and Haydn Society. If I sing her praises much longer, we won't have time to hear her play. In a few minutes, we're going to talk to both Christina and Nathaniel, but first, here she is, performing Bach's Sarabande from Partita No. 2.
Wow.
Come over.
Christina, come over. Oh my God, that was amazing.
It was amazing.
So soulful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, Christina and Nathaniel, thank you for being here with us today. I'm embarrassed to say this. I think of myself as fairly cultured and informed, but I've actually never heard of the Boston Baroque. I actually do know what a concertmaster is, lead violinist, right? And my son plays, his 14-year-old plays the violin, but I would love to take him to see more of you and Boston Baroque. So tell us more about what that is.
The orchestra?
Yeah, the orchestra, yeah.
So Boston Baroque and Handel and Haydn are orchestras that play on period instruments. So that's what I'm playing on, which is basically a violin set up in the 18th century style. And we're trying to kind of replicate the equipment that they used back then. That kind of gives us a window and glimpse into how they made music back then, which these violins are very different from modern violins. So.
Yeah, how is it different?
Well, I'll just a couple simple things. One is that we play on gut strings, so raw gut. So it's sheep gut, not steel strings, and therefore they're much more finicky. It's harder to play in tune. They squeak. They're very sensitive to the environment. But for us who love that, they also have a whole different layers of colors and expression that people like us love.
Well, there's no squeak. My son squeaks a lot, but you don't squeak at all on these strings.
Yeah. And this is also a big difference is the bow. I could just quickly show it's shorter and it's convex instead of concave and much lighter. And yeah.
And where do you guys play? I mean, because when I think of orchestras in town, like I think of the BSO and they play at the Symphony Hall or the Boston Pops. I mean, where do you play in town?
So Boston Baroque mostly plays in Jordan Hall. We've been in GBH also, but that will be ending moving forward. And then Handel Haydn plays in Symphony Hall and Jordan Hall also.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's great.
You are both at the pinnacle of, not that you can't go further, but you're both at sort of the pinnacles of your respective careers. Nathaniel, especially your body of documentary work, the festivals you've presented at, I love Tribeca, by the way. I'm not one of those people who says that everything happens for a reason, but in terms of this documentary, it feels like that. And even in that 9-minute clip, so how did you come together? And then when you realized it was developing into something more than just filmmaker and subject, and I'll start with you, Nathaniel, and then go to you. What was that like, that revelation of that?
Yeah, we first met in 2020. It was the summer post-pandemic. I guess we were still in the middle of the pandemic. And I interviewed Christina as part of Boston Baroque's upcoming virtual season because all of the performances had been canceled. No one could go to a venue. And we had about an hour and a half together. And I do remember thinking, like, we connected, and it felt like there's something more here. There's some more layers to pull back. And I said to our mutual friend, Jennifer, I said, it would be really interesting to explore a film that kind of centers around Christina. And we both just kind of put it up on a shelf and said, yeah, well, maybe. And then fast forward, Christina had an opportunity with Boston Baroque to travel to Europe to present some music in Prague in 2024. And in 2020, sorry, I'm jumping all over in the timeline, but in 2023, this kind of percolated up again, like it would be a missed opportunity not to document some of that. And so we dove right in, and we started with an interview in the fall of 2023. And this is sort of getting to your answer of where there was kind of there's something more happening here. That very first interview, really kind of big feelings and themes came up, memories surfacing from childhood, the challenge of juggling motherhood and being a parent, also being married and supporting someone who is also incredibly talented. Christina's husband, Halden, is a violinist for the Boston Symphony. And just all of the things that come to play in that is a lot. And so the one little follow-up after that is I had asked Christina at the end of that first interview, do you have any childhood photos, or is there anything I can kind of get a sense of what life was like for you growing up? And she sent me a photo of a box that her brother had sent to her, and inside the box, she said, would this be useful? And were maybe 30 or 40 8mm film reels and 4 slide carousels of 35mm photos.
Little treasure chest.
It was a treasure chest, and that was really kind of the, okay, now this isn't a short film, this is something much bigger that can be both personal and heartfelt and really kind of be a portrait of a person.
And the films that you unearthed and you saw, they were of your dad, right? Who was also an artist. So
yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's one thing in the film that's difficult and complicated for me, is that he was a brilliant visual artist, and but was also a very tortured man who was consumed by debilitating depression. So he was not always a part of our lives. You know, he sort of had his attic where he would go and withdraw, but he also produced this incredible art, and I feel that now I've worked through a lot with that, and he's since passed away, and I feel a connection also as an artist to him in a way that I didn't realize growing up. Like, I'm a classical violinist, he's an abstract painter. But I realized, you know, talking with Nathaniel too, how I create art, it was a real revelation for me one day to realize, oh, you know, I'm kind of an abstract artist, even though I play music, someone's written the notes for me and all that. But my form of expression, I feel, it always feels abstract. And that's why, for instance, words are difficult for me, because I feel like it confines me in a way that everything feels bigger than the words. And so I thought, you know, actually I kind of play in colors too. I think a lot about colors. And
I was so struck by that when I saw it in the clip of the film, and I wanted to ask you, when you realized that, going forward, what was the impact of that on your art and the way you felt about enlarging your voice through your art? Because that's a big revelation to realize that affinity between you and your father on that, but that you think you play in color.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's difficult because when I've said that to only a handful of people, and a couple of people bring up, I always forget the name of it, but there's a
synesthesia, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe. Synesthesia?
Is that what?
Yeah, but I don't have that, so that's not what it's about.
Right.
Just to clarify, it's more, again, it's like feelings of color. Like, I really like playing with color in tone. We talk about it all the time as classical musicians. Oh, let's do that, but with a different color. And we don't say, oh, let's play it in blue and let's play it in orange.
Right.
But there's just this palette of colors, and I think for me there was a time where I did start sort of thinking a little bit in color, and his paintings are all over our house. Like, so I practice in a room, I'm surrounded by his paintings, and I look at them and I think, oh, actually, yeah, I'm kind of going for that particular color. I don't want to define it necessarily, but it's helpful in terms of, it just feels like it opened up my understanding of myself too as an artist, because this abstract way of operating is not, a lot of people like things very clear. You know, they say, oh, do you want this quicker or faster or slower or louder or softer? And I have trouble defining some of the musical feelings and emotions and expression in those ways. And so it just helped me understand myself a little bit better.
And Nathaniel, that's the challenge, right? For you to bring that out in her, because that lives in her head. You're the filmmaker. You're supposed to make that accessible to us. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a wonderful challenge. I think some of it is, there's a lot of interviews that that give us a chance to kind of create a bed of conversation. And you know, it is a lot about dialogue, and I think there's moments of cinematically and cinematographically, we're not going to match her level of playing, but we are really making an effort to visually tell a story that is as beautiful as everything that she plays. And I think there's an opportunity for us to take the viewer to places that were remarkable for us as a crew, but also just allow an almost abstract way, visually speaking, to put her in these locations. We go to Amsterdam with her to reconnect with an old teacher. We go to the Czech Republic, and we're playing in 18th century palaces and abandoned monasteries. And it's this visual opportunity, I think, is a way that we try and elevate her story. And then there's animation that will come into play that we're working through to tell some of these stories that are more difficult and more nuanced, and there really is nothing to show. You have to kind of meet her where her story is.
Yeah. And Nathaniel, I think the clips that we saw, was was someone making a violin or something like that? Tell me about that. That was so fun. I was like, what is this guy doing? What's going on here?
Beautiful.
Yeah,
that was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, tell us about that. And and then the scene we saw, did you go and play for him or on the violin? What was that about? Yeah.
He was making this bow, actually.
Okay. Oh,
it's
really?
That,
oh,
yeah.
wow.
So in the film, he was hoping to have it finished by then, but he didn't. So he was working then and in that scene with me to try and figure out what to do and how to make the right bow for me and what I needed. So he had brought a few samples and was trying to figure out what wood he should use to get the both nuances that I wanted with overtones and also like a soloistic bow that could cut through to the back of a hall. So, and I had a previous bow of his, and I wanted to get a new bow, and so this whole project, like the Bach Chaconne, which is part of this partita, the second partita, it's the last movement in that partita, is played on, and it's the center of the film, and that is played on this bow that Pieter Afforti made for me. So,
and Christina, what was it like for you to be in a documentary, to be filmed for probably many hours and many days and many weeks and months, right? What was that like for you?
Yeah, honestly, it was very difficult in many ways. I'm not someone who likes cameras in any way. Anyone who knows me knows I hate them, including my husband or my family. I don't like when people try and take my picture. I don't like videos. And I don't like being the center of attention in those ways. And speaking is also difficult for me. So I was suddenly put in this situation where I had to do a lot of that and face some of those discomforts, I guess. But it also brought so much joy into my life and these opportunities, firstly, to meet Nathaniel and gain a great friend, and also the whole crew, actually. There are five guys, and I felt like I acquired 5 brothers. Like we've all felt very close and like family, and it felt a little bit for me like coming home to some of the joy that I had growing up. And also just the opportunity to reflect on my life and to think through some of my experiences and what shaped me as a person and as an artist, and to share that and talk about it, and even publicly. It's been a great gift.
So Nathaniel, was it hard to convince Christina to be on film all that time?
She has never been a huge fan of the interview process, especially, but she is articulate, and I think she's been a wonderful collaborator, and this project really has become
While
more
you're
of a
answering,
duet.
James, Christina, we're going to have you go over to get ready to favor us with the second selection. And we also want to remind people about the concert on June 17th at GBH's Fraser Performance Center. You can buy tickets on the GBH website, but James, while she's setting up, go ahead.
So how did you convince her to be on film all that time and make her comfortable?
I think a lot of it is just trying to build a rapport and be real and make sure that whoever we're working with feels at home and at peace and can be themselves. And
I think you did that. I think from the clip I saw, it's glorious.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we're now going to hear Bach's Sieg from Partita number 2.
Incredible.
That is absolutely amazing. Nathaniel, thank you for this film.
Oh my goodness. We've been speaking with and listening to Grammy-nominated violinist Christina Day Martinson, as well as Peabody-winning filmmaker Nathaniel Hansen. Nathaniel's upcoming documentary about Christina is called A Second Movement. You can find information by going to asecondmovementfilm.com. And you can also come to GBH on June 17th. Christina will be performing in studio. And I think, Nathaniel, you'll probably be filming, right?
We will
Right.
be behind the scenes filming, yep.
As part of the documentary. And you can get tickets at gbh.org/events. And you can get more information. I know I'm going to bring my 14-year-old to check it out. So coming up after the noon news, we talk with leaders from 2 local nonprofits about operating under shrinking federal budgets and confusing Trump orders. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, the Holocaust Museum breaks ground in downtown Boston. In the Berkshires, arts organizations form an alliance. On Broadway, it's dueling divas as a feud between Patti LuPone and Audra McDonald flares up. And everywhere, La Boo Boo is hanging out. That and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Marjorie Egan. Ahead on hour number 2 of BPR, live from the BPL, we host a panel with the leaders of 2 local nonprofits to discuss the current environment for organizations dealing with federal pressure and losing federal funding. Molly Baldwin from the violence reduction group ROCA and Jenna Leschuk of 826 Boston join us.
I'm Shirley Leung, in for Jim Browdy. Here with us today is Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett on RFK Jr.'s rollback of COVID vaccine recommendations, his AI-written Make America Healthy Again report, and cutting funding for a Moderna vaccine for bird flu. What could go wrong? All that, plus our 2 More Things segment, is next on the second hour of BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump travels today to the Steel City, Pittsburgh, to publicly support a merger he had previously vowed to fight: foreign control of U.S. steel. The Biden administration opposed Nippon's acquisition bid. So did President Trump. That was before he returned to office. NPR's Tamara Keefe says Trump's striking a different tone today.
A major theme of the first few months of his second term has been bringing foreign investment to the U.S., onshoring manufacturing, creating American jobs. And there are a few things that he relishes more than announcing a deal. Pennsylvania, of course, is also a state that delivered him the presidency, so he's going to call it a win.
NPR's Tamara Keith reporting. A federal appeals court says the president can temporarily continue with his sweeping tariffs on U.S. imports. The ruling came a day after the Court of International Trade in New York ruled against Trump, saying he exceeded his authority when he enacted the levies. NPR's Maria Aspen reports on what some economists are saying about tariffs and the U.S. economy.
Top executives at Goldman Sachs gathered to discuss the markets, the financial industry, and the broader economy. Speaking hours after a federal trade court blocked the tariffs, Goldman's chief economist, Jan Hatzius, said he's still worried about damage to the U.S. economy. Goldman currently predicts that the country has a 35% chance of tipping into a recession within the next year.
We don't think this court decision really makes a major difference. The president loves tariffs.
Hatzius says he expects Trump to continue looking for ways to impose the tariffs. Hours later, an appeals court gave them a temporary green light again. Maria Aspen, NPR News, Dana Point, California.
The New York Times and Amazon say they have agreed to a licensing deal. NPR's John Ruwitch reports it allows a tech company to access the newspaper's editorial content for uses related to artificial intelligence.
The multi-year deal will bring New York Times editorial content, including from the newspaper, NYT Cooking, and The Athletic, to a variety of Amazon customer experiences. A statement from the New York Times says that includes real-time displays of Times content within Amazon products and services, such as Alexa. It'll also be used to train Amazon's AI models. The Times reports that this is the first licensing arrangement it's entered with a focus on generative AI. In 2023, the company sued OpenAI, which operates the popular chatbot ChatGPT. Times says OpenAI used its content without permission to train the chatbot. The Times also sued Microsoft, which is OpenAI's biggest investor. OpenAI leaders have argued that its mass collection of data, including from the New York Times, is protected by fair use rules. John Ruwitch, NPR News.
From Washington, this is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. MIT closed its DEI office last week and says it's eliminating the role of the vice president for equity and inclusion. CBS reports that the decision follows an assessment of the office's work, and it comes at the same time that the Trump administration has an ongoing battle with MIT's Cambridge neighbor, Harvard University. And as summer tourism begins, Cape Cod business owners say that they're hoping for a good year, but craving stability. Tariffs are a big driver of the uncertainty, along with the Canadian boycott of the United States. Shana Ferrullo, owner of Snowy Owl Coffee Roasters, says she's recently had to raise prices because of changes in the market for green, unroasted coffee.
The tariff situation is really unfortunate because it just adds another layer of volatility, and it's not the reason why we raise prices, so I want to make that clear, but we just kind of don't know what of our products might be affected.
She and others say they're cautiously optimistic that travelers will still want to visit Cape Cod and spend some money. One question on their minds is what will happen in September, the so-called shoulder season at the end of summer. Canadians often visit the Cape in September, but some have canceled reservations because of the boycott. Sports, Red Sox open a series with the Braves in Atlanta tonight, and they're into the third round of the French Open tennis tournament at Roland Garros. If you're a fan of tennis, there's some good tennis being played right now. Cloudy skies, 74 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome back to our hour number 2 at BPR. Andrea Cabral and Shirley Leung in for Jim and Marjorie. We are live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. J&M will be back live on Monday. Next Ask the Mayor is June 17th. The next Ask the Governor is June 25th. Hello again, Andrea.
Hello again, Shirley. You know, we talk a lot about this on BPR. We talk about how chaotic and dangerous the impacts are and are going to be of the Trump administration's cuts, their on-again, off-again executive orders. Part of the chaos and the cuts are the funding for critical community programs, and people may not know this, but there are, tens of thousands of them, if not more. And the impact, as we say, is felt right here in Massachusetts. Two nonprofits hit hard by Trump's policies: 826 Boston, which provides free writing and tutoring to 3,700 students in Roxbury and Boston public schools, and ROCA, which people might be a little bit more familiar with, which helps at-risk youth in Chelsea and beyond with youth violence prevention, job training, and legal support. We're joined now at the BPL desk by Jenna Leschuk of 826 826 Boston, and Molly Baldwin of ROCA about what these cuts mean for the future of their work in the communities they serve. Molly is the founder and chief executive officer of ROCA, and Jenna is the senior director of development at 826. Molly and Jenna, thank you both for being here.
Thank you. All right, so Jenna and I are neighbors, actually, in Milton, and our 12-year-old sons have been friends for a long, long time. And I first got to know Jenna in 826 Boston. You ran the half marathon.
Yep.
It's a very cheeky fundraiser. Yes. One lap around Jamaica Pond.
Not even one.
And so what happened was that I made a donation last year, and then the fundraiser came around this year, and I got a note from Jenna, said, would you support this again? And in that email, that solicitation, I learned that 826 Boston had decided to forego a $250,000 federal grant because of a Trump executive order that said that if you have diversity, equity, inclusion programs, we will no longer fund you or make it very difficult for you to get new funding or to continue funding. And your board and your executive director made an incredible decision to not take the grant, not reapply for this grant that you've gotten for I think 12 years, right? So tell us more about how you guys made that decision and why.
Yeah, it was a difficult decision. They're not the type of organization that can look askance at $250,000. But what for us it came down to was the message we were sending our students. With our writing programs inside of Boston Public Schools and our tutoring center in Eggleston Square, the message we want to send to students is that their voices matter, and it doesn't matter what they're writing about, the backgrounds they're coming from, the stories they're telling, it's that their stories matter. And so standing in our beliefs and making this difficult decision was the right call for our organization. The funding was less than 10% of our budget. And
but there were 11 or 12 jobs attached to it, right?
Exactly.
Tutors.
Yep.
And this was through AmeriCorps, right? And
Yep.
I think you got that same grant for 12 years reliably. So it was pretty scary, but you stood by your values. And
steady funding is hard to come by in the nonprofit world.
Right. And Molly, now you lost funding, but not by choice, right?
Right.
Talk about that.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting us, and honored to be here with you all. So ROCA works with young people at the Center for Urban Violence across Massachusetts, in Hartford, Connecticut, and in Baltimore. We directly serve about 2,000 young people. And on April 22nd at 5:30 at night, we got 3 emails, and we lost essentially $4 million across all the states we work in. And the reason that was given is that the administration had changed its priorities, which we understand they could do. And their new priorities were addressing violent crime, working with law enforcement, addressing sexual abuse, and addressing trafficking. So for us, it's very confusing because as Andrea knows, for many, many years, we're hyper-focused on young people at the center of urban violence. We show a dramatic reduction in recidivism, and we're hyper-focused on young people who are really committing the most crime and who have been hurt a lot. So we do reduce recidivism. We have sort of unprecedented partnerships with police and corrections and probation and sheriff's departments, and in fact adapted our training for them as well. And then we work with very high-risk young women who are very engaged in, tragically, in human trafficking and sexual abuse. Have suffered a great deal from that. So we're sort of a little confused by this. So you were able to reach out to your grant administrator, which we did, and we heard from one and not the others, and then you could appeal. So we have appealed. We're not really sure what that means either.
And there were some immediate consequences. I mean, you had layoffs?
I mean, we had layoffs, and we sort of have been watching the trend around federal dollars once there was a new sort of administration. And so we tend to be fiscally very conservative, but it's really hard and dramatic. And we've worked, Baltimore, Boston, and also in Hartford, there's been a big reduction in homicides, and of which we have our lane. We don't do it all, but we've been very effective in our lane. So we're very concerned about how to continue the work, how to keep young people safe, and how to help cities feel safe and thrive.
So because people hear about these cuts, and if the program isn't benefiting them directly or they don't know anybody that's in it, it can go in one ear and out the other. So starting with you, Jenna, and then going to you, Molly, and you covered a little bit of this, Molly, already in your previous answer, but tell people concretely what your presence means in the lives of those children and in that community. And in your case, it's considerably larger, but that impact. Tell people what's being missed here.
Yeah, the stories of students are they need to be heard. These student storytellers that we're working with every day are the leaders of tomorrow. This book that I brought is The Great Cost of Freedom, and students at Boston International Newcomers Academy wrote it. They are all recent arrivals to this country. They have persisted and been resilient through incredible odds, and our city can learn from that. But also, those students are going to go on to do great things. We just know it. And we want to make sure that when they're telling their stories, they have an eager listener, someone like a tutor from one of our programs to listen to their stories, help them improve their writing. In the case of this school, probably moves along their English language learning as well, so that their time in this country can be really productive and healthy. This change for us means that instead of the 10 planned service members that would be directly supporting students next year, there will only be 5. And that to us is a huge change. I mean, for a small organization, small numbers make a big difference.
And Molly, specifically, I mean, Roca's reach has grown by leaps and bounds over many, many, many years. So you've got lots of places that you can talk about touching. But I want to bring home to people the concretion of those results and how completely incongruous it is for the Trump administration to say that they prioritize the very things that you're doing work on.
Absolutely. So directly, we work with about 2,000 young people, all who have been very engaged sort of in violent crime. As we understand brain science and what's happened to them, they've also suffered a great deal of harm, and that's a lot of what's causing this. We do know from science and from data that it takes several years for young people to change, and we've sort of built out, if you will, a street methodology for emotional regulation to teach young people how to take an 8 to 12 second pause between what they think and feel and what they do. And all our research shows it's highly effective. We work across Massachusetts, we're in 5 sites and 8 programs. So for example, we show year over year a 30% reduction in recidivism of young people compared to their peers in different situations, as well as a dramatic reduction in violent crime. Another example, interestingly, we, as you know, Andrea, early on we figured out we have to work with law enforcement because that's who young people are engaged with. Whether they like each other or not, it's a different discussion. And so we have some pretty unprecedented partnerships, and we adapted our emotional regulation curriculum for police and corrections officers, and we have now trained over 8,000. So we have quite an intense relationship. And then, as we built out our work with young women, sadly there are a lot of young women engaged in violence. About 44% of 400 young women are engaged in some kind of human trafficking. Wow. And it takes a long time. It takes several years. It takes a while for them to even understand that's what's going on. It's very dangerous at times to help them get out. But the same methodology of helping them understand who they are, emotional regulation, so that they can take this pause and make decisions is at play.
And Jenna, I think I wrote a story, I think end of April, and talking about how you guys made this decision, and your executive director, Corey Yarberg, he also did a video that he put on the website, and it was a call to action to say that if you believe in the work we do, please support us and help bridge this $250,000 gap. So did you guys make it? Are you going to make it?
Yeah, I wish Corey was here just to share this news. He's on parental leave, so the best reason ever. This is hot off the presses, Shirley. But yes, we can announce this week that donors really, truly stepped up for us, and we're going to pass the $250,000 mark this week.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely excellent. But the problem is that, you've got several more years of the Trump administration, and you shouldn't have to live administration to administration, let alone year after year. So I'm going to ask you both, and I'll start with Marley, and then I'll go back to you, Jenna. I've been stymied, whether we're talking about big law firms or whatever, about the inability of an entire sort of institutional world to link arms and say, you will not do this to us. We will sue you, we will resist you, and we will speak with one voice. So in the nonprofit sector, where are those efforts where it's sort of there are more of us than there are of you, and we're going to fight you. Even if we lose, we're going to fight you, because that, to me, is the only way you get back on track. So Molly, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, the whole community violence intervention sort of program network across the country, because 362 organizations at 5:30 at night lost a lot of money. So there's a really strong national coalition. There is a legal team that is working on a class action suit that's been filed, so we'll see where that goes. There's a whole sort of public relations media campaign, and then really a support campaign to help people figure this out over time. And I think one of the things that's very important, we've lost some money. We're trying to raise it back. Who knows? But we're trying. I think the thing that's important is to look over the next couple of years, as you were saying, because if you just do this 1 year at a time, we're just going to run out of effort and exhaustion and money. And so we're really trying to restructure ourselves. How do we get through fiscal 28 is really what I think. And I think that the federal cuts now and that what might be coming could dramatically impact states and cities, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's other programming, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's food. So we're really trying to look at, okay, how do we function differently? We will get through, like you, we will get through. I don't know that we'll look the same or be the same, but we will get through. But that is really the challenge, I think, in front of all of us. How are we thinking, and then how are we working with others to kind of move it forward? Because all the CVI programs, there was a 30% reduction in homicide across the whole country.
Wow.
And it was a bipartisan act, the Safer Communities, that funded these programs. So this is all a little confusing, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been truly heartened by the response. I think people want a way to help out. I think people feel powerless right now. And so what I was really heartened to see was that of those donors that, helped us raise that amount, most of them were new to our organization.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
More than 85% were new. And they also sent comments in with their donations. And we're going to be sharing them soon because I want everybody else to know how uplifting our communities are. They were, go get them, keep fighting. This is my $25. Hopefully you can get 10,000 more of them. Truly inspiring grassroots effort. And so On that same track, I mean, we're going to be continuing to fundraise because, as you mentioned, this is not a one-year game we're playing. This is for our livelihood in the long term, and we want to reestablish the size team that we think is going to serve students the best and the most consistently. The other thing is that we're looking for people to volunteer. So if you are also looking for a way to help out, to replace some of the service members that we're losing, we'd like to increase the number of interns and volunteers. An example of how our organization might look a little different as it operates in the coming years. There's easy way to sign up to volunteer on our website, and you don't need to be a teacher or a writer. We welcome all comers.
Jenna, what's the best website?
It's 826boston.org.
Right. And Molly, are you doing what 826 Boston is doing, is trying to rally donors?
We're doing, yes, a lot of everything. We're looking at our budget. We're running scenarios. We're trying to rally donors. We have, for a long time, and you may really appreciate this, people have wanted us to work with younger people who are really involved at the core of violence, not sort of a leadership program, but really into dangerous stuff. So we have committed to make that change. It is consistent with the mission, but it's a pretty dramatic restructure. And so how do we position funding so that we can get through the next couple of years, which has been a core strategy for what we're choosing to do.
I mean, do you have, beyond donors, what are the options? I guess this, you could go to the state, right? But the state is also under financial duress as well, right?
There are some funding sources for younger teens involved in systems that are sort of mandated. And so that is a different strategy for us. So we are embracing that. We are putting together a whole study team on how to do it well. So that's a key piece. We're looking at what funding we have that we could save, really focusing on 27 and 28. And we're trying to be really bold about, okay, we know we can get through, but if it really is very austere, what is our core and how do we do that well? So those are the things we're working on.
What about the voices of the people who benefit from your work? In the case of Roca, law enforcement benefits from your work, right? And there are some very strong voices in law enforcement. They may not necessarily be persuasive with this administration, but it never hurts to raise them.
Right.
For your work, Jenna, schools, teachers, everything about the immigrant dream coming to the United States of America, not that all of your students are immigrants, but for those who see the pathway through writing and expression, are there ways that you can tell people today that those people can raise their voices in support of you? If it's not financial, they could be something else?
Yes, definitely. Making calls to their elected officials does make a difference. I think when we are silent, it can be construed as accepting. And so making calls to your elected officials about where you think public funding should be going, the types of programs like ours that it should be supporting. And I think another way to raise your voice and stand out, not to say it all over again, is to volunteer in your community, whether it's for Roca or 826 Boston or something else. But a show of force like that keeps our institutions strong. And I also would just be remiss as a development director if I didn't say that philanthropy has a role to play here. Private foundations really need to step up and fill the void right now.
I was going to raise that. I think of Boston as an incredibly generous town. We have really big foundations here in the state, but also nationally. There's a lot of big foundations. So is there a sense that they're organizing in a way to fill the gaps left by the government?
I've seen some foundations come back to us and say, we hear you, we see what you're doing, we're in support, and a few have increased, but I think we need to see more of that organized, call to action.
So first of all, just to answer your question, this national movement has a law enforcement sign-on letter, which is really exciting. We're great. Very lucky. Our partners are responding in our sort of social media. We just had a sort of beloved partner in Baltimore write a whole thing. He was a former police department lieutenant colonel, so that's really helpful. I actually think our training helps. It brings that to the table. I think we're experiencing sort of a split in the private world, right? And some people are like, okay, we got to figure this out. What's the most effective way to do it? And I think people are very genuinely trying to understand this. And understandably, I think with some of the threats, I think people are sort of wondering what's going to happen to foundations. So I think we're a little bit in a limbo world here, and that's just, it's just, I had a wonderful mentor since passed, and every time it got hard, he'd lean over the table and go, like, what world do you want to live in? The one in your head or the one you're living in? And I'm like, oh, the one in my head, because I'm telling you, it's a lot easier there. So, trying to respectfully, understand that, but I sort of, I'm a little bit biased in this direction, but I really think thinking about several years at once is a far more effective strategy for us at the moment, because we're not really at the end of federal cuts. We don't really know what's coming.
No.
And it could be a lot more.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think this is done in anticipation of the impact that these tax cuts for the richest 1% are going to have when they explode the deficit. The impact they actually have is yet to be seen.
Yeah. I think it's. I don't envy you what you guys are dealing with right now. I mean, it's incredible because. I think about what's going on with the tariffs. It's like on again, off again. So you actually don't know, right? If Trump, the administration, is going to make good on these drastic cuts. It could just be a one-time thing, and next year goes back to normal. But you don't know.
We like that version, though. Just to say.
Right. You would like it's just a temporary cut, and then we'll go back to normal next year. But you don't know. But you have to plan as if you have to plan for the worst case scenario, right? And
so we've worked really hard to kind of hold on to the same number of young people. I mean, we've got incredible directors and leaders, running caseloads and knocking on doors, and we're holding on to that for a minute, but we don't know what comes next. And unfortunately for our incredible staff team, they're like, well, is this the end of this? And we're like, we have no idea. So it's really hard.
So now that we only have like a minute or so left, but now that we know what the federal government can do to you when you're inclined, is there a silver lining for nonprofits or a lesson in this that you would each leave us with? I'll start with you, Jenna.
It's a lesson that I guess we
Beyond
will learn
what
either
doesn't
way.
kill you makes you stronger, right? That's the big one.
I think there is a value in standing up for what you believe in. I think our lesson that we learned here is that it's important to be brave, and people will respond to that call, and that actually there are downsides when you don't. Like we feared actually losing funding if we didn't stick to our guns and insist on keeping diversity, equity, inclusion at the center of our mission. But yeah, I think the main lesson is that we can bend, we can be resilient, and we can stay the course.
I guess I would just say, second that, and also just not only is the work important, but young people and people are so inspiring. In spite of everything that's so hard, we just witness incredible changes. Young people who make completely different decisions to get out of the street, to change their lives, to be the mother or the father they hope to be, and the enormous privilege of working with great people who want to do the right thing. And I think there are a lot more of us. And so we just got to figure out how you're right, as you said, Andrea, this whole locking arms, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for being here. This was a great primer on what nonprofits are experiencing.
We've been speaking with Jenna Luschek, Senior Director of Development at 826 Boston, and Molly Baldwin, Executive Director of ROCA. You can find more information about ROCA at rocainc.org and 826 Boston at 826boston.org. Thank you for both of you coming in. Coming up after a quick break, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett is here. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
What if you didn't actually need to know how to code to make your own app? Maybe now you don't. But then what happens to all the coders?
Coders feel like they are tending kind of organic gardens by hand. But we are producing these superhuman agents that are going to be as good as the best coders in the world, like very, very soon.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. How AI could put human coders out of a job on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Furniture Consignment Gallery, offering pre-owned home furnishings in their locations in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth during their Memorial Day event. Details online at FurnitureConsignment.com. And Bunker Hill Community College, offering 6-week summer mini-sessions to achieve college and skills goals. Sessions start June 1st and July 14th. Registration at bhcc.edu/summer.
Welcome back to BPR. I'm Andrea Cabral. I'm here with Shirley Leung, and we are both in for Jim and Marjorie. We're live at the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now at the desk by Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care and Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Hello, Dr. KGB.
Hello.
I love that
Thank you
nickname.
for, yeah, that is definitely the moniker that I go by.
I love it. I love it.
Yes.
All right, so we've got a lot to talk about with RFK Jr.
That is true. Where should we start?
Okay, we're going to start with COVID vaccine. This is very interesting because, whether or not we're 5 years after COVID, who among us still needs a COVID shot? We were talking about this. Andrew and I were talking about it earlier. I have not had a COVID vaccine shot in 2 years. I don't think anyone in my family has. Early on we had a lot of COVID vaccines, but
I am a vaccine person. I was boosted again in March.
But now RFK Jr. has just unilaterally decided, made the rules about COVID shots, who gets them and who doesn't. And even though, it seems like there are a lot of different opinions on who should get them now, he really bypassed he bypassed the process. I'm more upset about the process that he just decided to make this decision. And that's unprecedented, right? I mean,
That's correct.
What are you supposed to do? How are these decisions supposed to be made?
Yeah. So every time we have a set of recommendations around what should be happening with vaccines and vaccine schedule, the CDC really works in conjunction with a group called the ACIP, which is really a group of advisors who are all experts in medicine, infectious disease, look at the data. The CDC and the ACIP, in fact, have been gathering to ask this very question, saying, we know we're not at the same place that we were several years ago. How do we start to think more specifically around the scientific evidence that is out in terms of who's at highest risk and making sure they get the vaccines, and those people who are not as high risk, that could be a decision that they make with their provider. So we know that was already in the works. They were actually planning on coming out with some recommendations in a few weeks. Tuesday night, we get less than 1 minute on X, of all places, for the announcement, and RFK Jr. Showed up, and he with him had the FDA and the director of the NIH. Note there was nobody from the CDC there because the CDC doesn't have an acting director currently, and unilaterally said that we will no longer be recommending COVID vaccinations for healthy children and pregnant women. So we know that both of those categories have already been proven to be higher risk category. All of the children who are not vaccinated, the majority of the children who get hospitalized are not vaccinated, and the majority of babies who get hospitalized were born to women who are not vaccinated when they're pregnant, and there's a lot of safety and efficacy data that's out there. So not only was it unprecedented about the way it was delivered and the way they, kind of hijacked the way it normally goes, but the data is actually inaccurate. So myself, my OBGYN colleagues, my pediatrician colleagues, we were all not only shocked about the way it happened, but very dismayed because it actually will leave potentially many, many people at high risk who we know should be vaccinated.
So I just want to, just so that people understand that this is nothing that the good doctor is saying is an overstatement. I'm going to read to you from the directive. This is what RFK Jr. said. Based on a review of the recommendation of the FDA and the National Institutes of Health, I have determined that the known risks associated with the use of COVID-19 vaccines in healthy U.S. children ages 6 months to 17 years do not outweigh the purported benefits of the vaccine. So the risks don't outweigh the benefits. Accordingly, the HHS secretarial directives ratifying the CDC recommendations for use of COVID-19 vaccines for children ages 6 months to 17 years and there's a big typo there, are rescinded. The directive itself, the language of the directive itself doesn't even make any sense. He says that he's determined that the risks don't outweigh the benefits, but yet you no longer need to get this vaccine. Yeah. He's an environmental lawyer. He has no background in health. He's not a doctor, nothing. Yes. How is this standing?
Well, I mean, and on top of that, I know when I've been on, the show many times before, we've talked about the lack of medical training. That in and of itself shouldn't be the problem, right? Because he is surrounded by FDA, the NIH, the CDC, obviously, with no directive right now. And so the fact that wasn't counteracted by the scientific community prior to him standing up is part of what feels so dismaying about what's happening right now.
How does that even happen?
I obviously don't know. But I will say we don't know what's going to happen. So I don't want to just be all alarmist. We haven't actually seen what is going to happen with our standard kind of vaccination schedule. We know that once it is recommended, we know that payers need to reimburse and make it free for people. So the rubber hits the road when we understand what's going to happen for people who need or want to get vaccinated. For instance, working with an OBGYN or a midwife or a family medicine doctor who's doing prenatal care, and women saying, actually, I know that I should get vaccinated. I have seen all this data. I don't want my baby to get sick. I don't want to get sick. Women who are pregnant are much higher risk of getting sick. I want to get vaccinated. And then where do we send them? Can we send them to CVS? It's almost $200 a pop for a COVID vaccine. So are people going to be asked to pay out of pocket? And then, what happens to the health equity that we continue to talk about? So only people who can afford the vaccine are going to have access to the vaccine. So it creates many more questions than answers. But it's really important for your listeners to know, A, that the news conference happened, and B, that we in medicine are, speaking out and very much hope that we can counteract some of this motion forward.
I mean, when do you think you'll have some clarity?
That is a great question, Shirley. Every day is a new snowstorm. I don't know.
But seriously, I'm thinking about you and your colleagues on the front lines. If you have a woman who's pregnant who's coming in and said, I'm really worried about getting COVID, can I get the vaccine? So what happens?
Well, currently we know we have the vaccine. It hasn't been retracted. We do know that people can get access to it. But we also know that there's lots of reports out that show that trust in vaccines gone down. Just about 10 years ago, about 60% of parents said, absolutely, I should get my child vaccinated. We're now at about 40%. So, the conversation is shifting. Yeah. And with the information we have, those of us on the front lines, are also shifting. Again, remember, one of the benefits of living in a place like Massachusetts is we can actually secure some of our own internal resources for access to vaccines, et cetera. This does not have to be a mandated, what's happening federally does not have to mandate the way that we move forward in public health in Massachusetts. So that's a really important silver lining, if there is one.
Well, to add insult to injury, which I say a lot these days, the White House issued this so-called MAHA report. I'm really tired of the Make America blah, blah, blah stuff, but this is Make America Healthy Again. Mm-hmm. That is, to sort of say that this is the epitome of incompetence in terms of something issued by the White House, I think is just a huge understatement. So tell people what this report is, and then tell them what it isn't.
Yeah. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. I actually think there's a lot. I'm thrilled that we're talking about making America healthy again. I think that's an amazing idea, right? That is, music to all of our ears, those of us in the front lines, those of us in public health. There are some really good pieces of this report. So it is, for those of you who have not seen it or had the opportunity to download it as a PDF, which I just did the other day, it's 69 pages long. It has 522 citations. We will get to the citations in a moment. There's 4 major parts to it. So one is really thinking about food and the health of our food. The other is really thinking about chemicals in the environment. This is all, by the way, about children's health. This is the thrust of this report. The third is really thinking about mental health of our children and screen time. And the fourth is talking about vaccines and what RFK and HHS are thinking about vaccines. The first piece around ultra-processed food, I cannot support this more. I think we absolutely need to be working with schools to get healthy lunches, to ensure that we're not having corporations dictate what goes into our food, so that we are actually getting more research on the front lines around the impact of microplastics and what's going into some of the ultra-processed food. I think that's terrific. I think we need to be doing more of that. There is some stuff on, and similarly, we're not doing enough research on chemicals and the environment. That is a really important part of what we call environmental health, but also public health that is absolutely not studied enough, and the FDA needs to be stepping in and saying, this is what we should be allowing, this is what we shouldn't be allowing. We have very little data on that right now, and we should accelerate that.
And not deregulating the companies that put those chemicals in our systems would be a good idea, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the third piece, and I'll wrap this piece up, and we'll talk about some of the resources and the data that they collected, mental health and screen time. Vivek Murthy, who we know is a Surgeon General under President Biden, and before him, actually, Obama, actually a classmate and friend of mine from medical school, was really clear about the impact of what's happening in mental health in our children. The fact is, we can talk about the impact of screen time, but unless you're actually making some recommendations about what to do with it, I think, Dr. Murthy said it very beautifully. It's like putting somebody in a car with no seatbelts, right? And saying the car's going to crash, but we don't actually have any regulations to stop it. The fourth piece, which is very disturbing and goes back to what we were just talking about, is vaccines. And saying we don't have any placebo studies, we don't have enough studies on the safety of vaccines, and that is absolutely false. So we actually, on most childhood vaccinations, we do large studies. People do large studies that actually are driven by placebo. So polio, MMR, hepatitis B, HPV, and meningococcal vaccine are just a few examples. So I'll pause there because I actually think, again, it's really important to be nuanced and take the politics out of it. Let's talk about what good public health is and what we know the data is not showing us. The very concerning thing is that now there's a lot to indicate that this report was generated by AI, large parts of it. So how do we know that? We'll actually see all kinds of open source AI links next to many of the references, okay? We know that many of the references were duplicated, which happens with OpenAI. We know that many of the references contain dead links. In other words, they didn't go anywhere. We also know that many of the references had the wrong author or authors that AI just hallucinated, don't exist.
Or a non-existent study.
Or a non-existent study. Right, in which case sometimes the link was just dead. So how can we possibly be building a pathway towards scientific rigor and when we are looking at something that in and of itself, we don't know where the evidence came from, right? There are absolutely, again, really important thrusts for where we're going. We know we need to get children healthier. We know that our obesity rate is off the hook. We know that depression is off the hook. All of these things, but we need to understand the data better and be doing a much more rigorous job about actually quoting. Anybody who was in high school or college will know that they got caught making a really sloppy report. So I see some young people in the audience, that's just embarrassing that came out. So I think, kind of coming clean with the way in which that Maha report was made is really important.
I think they are trying to. I think they are going to. I think they've made a
They already started to pull the actual citations.
That used to happen before you released something to the public when you were the White House in the United States of America.
It did.
Yeah.
Dr. KGB, you recently wrote an op-ed in the Boston Globe, and this is about opining about the primary care crisis, how it requires urgent action. Talk about why there is this crisis right now. I mean, I know everybody knows how hard it is to get a primary care doctor. I mean, I think Andrea and I, we've hung on to ours for many years. It's hard to find a good one. Great. And so why is there such a crisis here?
Yeah. I really dislike the word crisis because I think it gets overused, but in this case, it actually is a crisis. So my colleagues and I have been sort of beating this drum for many years. I think Massachusetts is finally listening to us. We have a task force that has been set up within the legislation, really thinking about primary care and what are the recommendations. We have work that's myself and others have put together some legislation called Primary Care for You. And yet, one of the pieces that we don't think about enough is the training. So we just had the match this spring, and this is what inspired myself and my colleague, Wendy Barr, who works with the American Board of Family Medicine, to say that when you look at the numbers of medical students who are matching into residency, we actually see a slight bump in primary care spots, which feels very reassuring, especially in a state like Massachusetts. Shirley, to your point, we actually have some of the poorest access to primary care. It takes us 40 days, we know, to just even try and find a new primary care doctor. And that's, I think, a nice estimate. We know more people go to the emergency room here than other states. So one of the things that we are really pointing to is that not all primary care residencies are the same. I love my colleagues in internal medicine. I love my colleagues in pediatrics. I was a program director of residency for a number of years. I really believe in the process of training residents. But when you actually look at the data, 97% of people who go into family medicine stay in primary care. Really? And that's super different than people who match into pediatrics. Only 57% of people who match in pediatrics stay in primary care, and only 30+ % of people who go into internal medicine stay in primary care. So you can see this huge delta. They usually specialize, right? And so they use that as a launching off point to do another specialty, which, we live in the most saturated place for medical specialty, and I love where we live in Massachusetts, but we don't emphasize what it means to train and match people to go into primary care and stay in primary care.
Is it money?
Part of it is, it's not money. Part of it is money because Medicaid GME dollars used to specifically support family medicine residencies. We're one of 4 states in the country that don't use GME Medicaid dollars to support family medicine. We, in Boston, we think about all the academic medical centers we have. Boston Medical Center, where I work and I train residents, is the only hospital in Boston that's an academic medical center that trains family medicine.
Oh, wow.
We think of MGB. I'm not calling anybody out, but there are these large epicenters of healthcare that could be training so many family medicine doctors, and part of it just has not been a priority. We've put it on our community health centers, we put it on our community hospitals saying, you do it, it's your job. You take care of the community, we'll do the academic medicine piece. And it can't work like that. It actually needs to be partly centered in academic centers and built to collaborate with community health centers. So our call to action was part of the solution for the primary care crisis is focusing on more spots and more residencies and more monies towards family medicine specifically.
Well, what about the impact of the insurance industry and their refusals? Like primary care doctors probably get second-guessed by insurance companies about what's necessary and what's not, diagnostically, treatment-wise. Specialists, my perception is that specialists don't have as big a problem with that with insurance companies. Is that contributing?
I would say maybe that's less of a thing. I think what you're pointing to, which is really important, is that if I do a procedure, I'm actually reimbursed less than if my colleague who's a hyper specialist does the same procedure. So I could do 12 things in one visit and I would get paid less than a person doing a hyper specialized procedure does in 10 minutes.
I see.
So part of it is, it is financial in that way about how much our hospitals getting paid to have primary care. But honestly, isn't it the responsibility of our hospitals to be thinking about how they take care of the communities where they are?
That's right. So there was another interesting study out recently about, I love this. They're actually tracking mothers' mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And there's been a significant decline. Mothers are, and it's not just pandemic related, they're exhausted. And
yes,
exhausted. As a mother of two, and you really
mother of three.
We're exhausted. And also I think this study pointed to, it's not just the juggle, right, the mental load, but also the financial pressures, of raising children.
Housing, daycare,
all of it. And so, tell me about this study. Why is this being studied, and what is the hope? What do you get out of studying this?
Yeah, well, first of all, to your point, just to name it, I think is really important. So the piece that you're alluding to came out of JAMA very recently. It's an important academic medical journal that studied maternal mental health. It actually took 200,000 women and studied from the years 2016 to 2023, and they found that 1 in 12 women had poor mental health. So fair or poor is how they rated it, compared to the last study that culminated in 2016, which said 1 in 20 women. So 1 in 20 women to 1 in 12 where we are today. So obviously that's a huge increase. And, it was important that it kind of called on some of the legislation that could be enacted, specifically thinking about there's no national paid paternal leave or parental leave, right? So we know that that's hugely stressful for people who are building a family, that they don't have this. But on top of that, to your point, stress at home, increased prices, isolation, which wasn't just because of the pandemic, but has gotten accelerated. The other piece that they didn't list in this article, but I just wanted to kind of throw out there for your listeners, is those of us who have been parents, our saying is you're only as happy as your least happy child. So let's talk about what's happening again in, pediatric and the mental health of our children. And again, thinking about what can we do, what can MAHA do, what can, in terms of specifically legislating what our kids are exposed to psychologically and physically. And then the other piece is, again, like going back to if your kid's not vaccinated against polio and your child gets polio, I can tell you your mental health is going to go down as a mother. Right. So how are we also thinking about systems of how do we keep our families safe and, how it impacts women? Obviously, it's not just women, it's parents, both parents, no matter what the system is or the structure of a family.
Okay, we've run out of time, but I just want to flag one more thing.
Perfect.
We're going to be talking to listeners later about double dipping, right? There's
double dipping.
Another new study.
Double dipping your chips.
Great
and your
article.
veggies.
Yes, another study saying that double dipping may not be as risky as you think. So where are you, Dr. KGB, on double dipping? What should we be doing?
Okay, so this is a really great little fun piece. So, and I can't wait to hear what your listeners have to say. So really, we all think of like the yuck factor, right, of double dipping if we're watching somebody do it, but it's kind of, if you're eating, it looks kind of good. It's hard to sometimes avoid doing it. So the study shows that when people double dip, there is bacteria and stuff that goes into the dip, but dips matter. So like salsa, which is acidic, is a little different than like a cheese dip, right, which is basic. But the fact is that very rarely then creates a illness for the recipient of the double dipping. That being said, if you have norovirus, like the stomach bug, don't double dip.
So we run out of time, but so what would you do? Are you a double dipper or not?
I'm not a double dipper.
Yeah, I would guess that. I would guess that.
Yeah.
All right, we've been speaking with Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. She's not a double dipper. She's Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Coming up after this quick break, there's just enough time left in the hour for our Two More Things segment. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, just in time for a season of bare faces to the sun and toes in the sand, summer reading recommendations from 3 local librarians. New books of historical fiction, romance, mysteries, and more. It's our 2025 summer reading special. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Children's Museum, featuring 100 Acre Wood, a Winnie the Pooh experience. Visitors can sort honey and acorns with Pooh Bear and Piglet, bounce with Roo and Tigger, or read one of Owl's favorite books. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org. And Chevalier Theater. Pianist David Foster and trumpeter Chris Bodie are performing together and featuring vocalist Catherine McPhee at the Chevalier Theater Sunday, June 15th. Tickets and information are available at chevaliertheater.com.
Welcome back to BPR. I'm Andrea Cabral, and I'm here with Shirley Leung. We are both in for Jim and Marjorie. We're live at the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We only have time for one more thing in our Two More Things segment, and this is the space where we shove in a couple of things if we can, one if we can't, that we can't quite make fit into the rest of the 3 hours. So the one more thing we have today is an absolutely lovely letter that I received from Diane V. Owens. She's from Marion, Massachusetts. She is a longtime avid fan of the Jim and Marjorie show. She listened to a segment that Carol Rose from the ACLU was on, and Carol Rose was imploring people to do something, find something that they could do to fight back, make their voice heard. She sent me an absolutely beautiful card, which I will keep forever, where she not only told me how much she appreciates my work on the show, but being inspired by Carol Rose. This woman, by the way, is 84 years old, was inspired both to send the note as a way of doing something to let someone know that she appreciated them, but also at 84 years old, got up and went to the march I think it was in March, April 5th, took the commuter rail down to this march and went to it. And that was her way. She went by herself, and that was her way of doing something. And what she said was she was so glad that she did something. The crowds, the energy, the noise, and the diversity were breathtaking. She tells us to keep on keeping on. She appreciates our voice, and we wanted to tell her that we appreciate her. Diane Owens of Marion, Massachusetts, thank you for your lovely, lovely card.
Her beautiful handwriting, too.
And her beautiful hand, you can tell she was taught cursive.
So anyways, that's all the time we have for one more thing today. Sorry about that. So coming up after the 1 o'clock news, it's time for Press Play, our Friday afternoon media analysis segment. We'll talk with GBH's Callie Crossley and Ron Mitchell from the Bay State Banner. Stick around. You're listening to BPR and 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Native Plant Trust, a source for pollinator-friendly plants, available at Garden in the Woods in Framingham. More at nativeplanttrust.org. And Newport Mansions, presenting Richard Morris Hunt in a new light, a groundbreaking exhibition examining the architect's impact on American culture and his vision for a gilded American civilization. Opening May 30th at Rosecliff.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Jim Browdy. Ahead on the third hour of BPR, live from the BPL, it's our Friday media analysis segment called Press Play. This week, GBH's Callie Crossley and the Bay State Banner's Ron Mitchell discuss a surprising rise in local not-for-profit news organizations, NPR's lawsuit against Trump, and the Pulitzer Prize winners who used artificial intelligence to aid their reporting.
I'm Shirley Leung, in for Marjorie Egan. Then we'll end the show with a very made-for-Jim Browdy topic, double dipping and you. New research finds that even if you think it's gross, it's probably not going to make you sick. So should you do it? Or should we still maintain some decorum when sharing food? What about dropping an entire lobster claw on the floor at a fancy event? What are you supposed to do then? Weigh in next on the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump welcomes back his close advisor Elon Musk to the White House later this hour. Musk says he is leaving the federal government. NPR's Stephen Fowler has more on what that means for the entity known as the Department of Government Efficiency.
Musk departs DOGE after 130 days marked by legal setbacks, clashes with cabinet members, and little evidence to support claims of savings or government efficiency. He says his scheduled time as a special government employee is up, and he's returning his focus to his business empire. Musk's departure won't likely change much. Much of the DOGE work, the parts that haven't been reversed or held up in court at least, have always been done by people embedded in agencies as full-on federal employees. Stephen Fowler, NPR News, Atlanta.
The Supreme Court is allowing the Trump administration to revoke, for now, a Biden-era program that gave migrants from unstable countries temporary legal status in the United States. NPR's Adrian Florido reports the decision means 500,000 people could now face deportation.
The court's order was brief and unsigned, but its ramifications were clear. The government can, for the time being, move forward with expelling about 500,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, and Nicaragua who benefited from the program known as humanitarian parole. The Biden administration had temporarily allowed them into the U.S. as long as they had a private sponsor. President Trump tried to revoke their status on his first day in office, but lower courts blocked him. The program's ultimate fate is still being litigated, but for now the justices have said deportations can proceed. Justices Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor dissented, citing, quote, the devastating consequences of allowing the government to precipitously upend the lives of close to 500,000 people. Adrian Florido, NPR News.
The United Nations has warned that 100% of the population of the Gaza Strip is at risk of famine. At a news briefing in Geneva, Jens Lurker of the UN Humanitarian Office, OCHA, accused Israel of blocking all but a trickle of humanitarian aid from entering the Palestinian territory since partially lifting a blockade earlier this month.
Gaza is the hungriest place on earth, and the aid operation that we have ready to roll is being put in an operational straitjacket that makes it one of the most obstructed aid operations, not only in the world today, but in recent history.
Lurker is heard on the BBC. After a years-long battle for control over her own music, Taylor Swift has announced she is finally in charge of the master recordings of her first 6 albums. On her official website, the Grammy-winning superstar said today she purchased her material, originally released through Big Machine Records, from their most recent owner, the private equity firm Shamrock Capital. She did not disclose the amount she paid. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. What happens to all those Taylor versions? Politics was part of the pomp and circumstance at MIT's commencement today. As thousands of MIT grads were getting their diplomas, a speech from MIT Chancellor Melissa Nobles was briefly derailed by chants from students whose voices could be heard loud and clear. The disruption came amid controversy in the MIT community over Nobles' decision to bar from the event MIT's current class president, who had given a pro-Palestinian speech at a different commencement ceremony yesterday. And that's when Megha Vermuri shifted from her prepared remarks and expressed support for Palestinians in Gaza. She called for MIT to cut ties with Israel, criticized administrators at the school, which she accused of being complicit in what she calls the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. State transportation officials warning drivers there could be serious, big-time backups on the Mass Pike this weekend as construction crews get underway. Starting at 9 o'clock tonight, traffic on the Pike will be reduced to one lane in each direction between exits 123 and 125 at the border between Newton and Weston. State Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver says the work is part of a major project to rebuild 128's interchange. He says, avoid the Pike if you can.
Use Google Maps, use Apple Maps, use Waze, whatever. They are going to get you to the best route to get to wherever it is you need to go. But first and foremost, give yourself extra time. You're going to need it.
The closure is set to last until 5 o'clock Monday morning. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Welcome back to hour number 3 of BPR. Andrea Cabral and Shirley Leung in for Jim and Marjorie. We are live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. J&M will be back live on Monday. The next Ask the Mayor is June 17th. Ask the Gov is June 25th. Hello again, Andrea.
Hello again, Shirley. It is now time for our Friday media analysis segment, which we call Press Play. And here at the BPL desk, we have two familiar faces. The first is GBH's Callie Crossley. Callie, as you know, is the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which airs Sunday nights at 6 here on 89.7. You can also hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. She's also co-host for GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock right here on 89.7, including today's Week in Review from the BPL. Hello, Callie. Good to see you.
Hello. Hello.
And we also have with us Ron Mitchell. Ron, as you know, is the editor and publisher of the Bay State Banner, the news outlet centered around Black and Latino communities in Massachusetts. Ron, long time no see. Good to see you again.
Good
Hello.
to see you again. Thank you so much for having me here.
All right,
Pleasure.
this is a segment near and dear to my heart, being a journalist. So, so there's this new study that's really interesting. It's out of the, I think it's called the Institute for Nonprofit News, and I think about how local is now the most common type of nonprofit news outlet in North America. And I know this from firsthand experience. My longtime editor, former editor in the business section, Mark Pothier, he left the Globe after, I think he was there for almost 2 decades. He left in 2023 to become the founding editor of the Plymouth Independent. And so it's a nonprofit news outlet focused on covering Plymouth. And now this study has shown that 51% of the 500 members of the Institute for Nonprofit News are these local news sites. I mean, it used to be when nonprofit news emerged as a category, it used to be single subjects, right? Like investigation or criminal justice or education, but now local is in. So Ron, why do you think local news is, I mean, are you surprised how much local news has grown as a nonprofit model?
No, not at all. In fact, I think this is a trend where we see communities wanting to have their own voice, and the nonprofit avenue for funding is a unique way to do it. we at the Banner most recently has founded the Banner Institute for Community News, which is a nonprofit sidearm of the Banner, with Keith Motley as our chairman of the board, Charlie Titus as our treasurer, Denise Kegler, Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot from Harvard, Marita Rivero, Glenn Lloyd. And what we all decided when we came together to create this is exactly what this report talks about. The importance of local news, and it's what folks are now believing in. You know, we watch the national news outlets being manipulated by Trump's administration and various other funding sources, the owners, the billionaires who own them. So I think that people overall are excited about the opportunity to hear news from a local source, and I think that's the most reliable funding model, especially now that we see a lot of other funding sources shrinking around the country.
Kelly, does this have the potential to be better than the way local news used to be? It was largely sort of, you'd have local newspapers, does this have, what kind of potential do you think this has?
Well, it has huge potential. And as our friend Dan Kennedy and his co-author Ellen Clegg have pointed out in their book when they examined local news and how much consumers of news really trusted local first. That's where they went because there's so much distrust, as you know, about our institution in general. But when you ask people about their local news, they felt very comfortable with that and felt that they were getting the product that they should get that they could trust. Anyway, so I think that the expansion could be just huge. And you've got all these people that used to work in a more kind of traditional setting that have moved, just like Shirley's boss moved, or Shirley's colleague moved. I think we've seen a lot of that because people are looking for ways to really cover those local communities in the way that they know that people want to hear. And frankly, for me, that's where I go when I want to know, now, why are they moving to McDonald's? I mean, that's not something that necessarily rises to the level of the front page of the Globe, you know what I mean? But it does in my community.
Yeah, so Mark went to the Plymouth Independent, is the founding editor, and he was able to start something because some of the, I don't know if it was Gannett or some of these, Plymouth used to be covered by a local newspaper, but it closed through a lot of consolidation over the decades. So there are actually news deserts all over the country right now. And Massachusetts, there have been quite a few of these nonprofits starting up, whether it's Brookline or in New Bedford.
I know growing up in New England, for me, there was the Tab, there was the Phoenix, there was a whole host of local news outlets that were all driven locally. I think it would also speak to the quality of news gatherers and journalists who are available now. I think with some of these huge conglomerate news companies breaking up and shrinking, getting smaller, there's a lot of high-quality journalists who are available. Also, when we were researching purchasing the Banner, we found out just what you said was that there used to be black newspapers in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine.
Wow.
Yes, black-owned newspapers. Rhode Island, huge black community, one of the oldest black communities, free black communities in Newport. I found out only recently, considered myself educated, but things happen, you find out as the information comes to you. But what we at the Banner are hoping to do is to also utilize our nonprofit to help expand into those markets, to do a Connecticut version, a Rhode Island version, to help provide a voice for black and brown communities in those states as well, and that's one of the founding goals of the Banner Institute. It was one of our original models when we purchased the paper over 2.5 years ago, but obviously advertising, the chicken or the egg. Do you have the ad do you have the money to expand? Now, with that nonprofit, that'll help us to get the funding to be more inclusive into those other states that surround, and hopefully will become the New England Banner. But as I said, it's a trend we see nationally, and it's important. It's very important that local communities have a voice, and it's been shrinking for decades since the Phoenix and all those other papers.
Kelly, can you speak really quickly to the need to build a farm team? Where people ask, where are the new reporters coming from? And the opportunities at the now corporate-owned media aren't as, people are sticking where they are because that's where their paycheck is. Talk to the potential for this to nurture a whole new generation or new generations of young reporters.
Oh, well, that's, absolutely the case. Because if you have folks who are in the community who are themselves respected, they know or where the sources are to get people who are interested in journalism and bring them along. And there, despite what people may think, there are lots of still programs going on in high school and college for those people interested. Then there's, the bigger programs like the one that Charlie Sinnott was involved with, which is Report for America, which is very vibrant. And the whole goal of Report for America is to send those young people to news deserts. And so what we find is that when people like Shirley's colleague and others decide they want to do a local outlet, they go back to their home. And usually a lot of those homes are rural or in places that somebody else bigger would not think it was a place to start an outlet.
I mean, this is such an exciting trend. And Andrea, you and I were talking earlier about how it's so important to for the pipeline of journalists to start at a local level, to know what it's like to cover a town meeting, and to get to
Select board.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because that's how a lot of us of certain generations.
I learned on the people of Memphis. I'm sure many a night they said, what is she saying? What is she talking about? Thank you, people of Memphis.
But it's really important, because nowadays you could just sit at your desk and your phone and not get out in the community. And when you work at these local news nonprofits, you actually have to know the town managers. You have to get into community. And as Andrew and I, we were talking earlier about this. Those little stories lead to the big stories.
Always.
And so it's really important that for kind of the next generation of journalists, that they train kind of the way a lot of us, trained I've been in the business 30 years now, and this is how I started in the suburbs, covering meetings and really getting to know the community and build your beat. I feel like that's a bit of a lost art these days.
The shoe leather, as opposed to you just go quote somebody from somebody else's site.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
And that dovetails into actually the next segment, which is not only are you going to have these new nonprofits covering local news, but they've got to find ways to attract younger audiences. So I'll start with you, Ron, and then I'll go to you, Callie, because I want to know both of your opinions on this. How are media now figuring out that they have a different audience and they've got to go at them differently to get their attention?
Well, I've been a big proponent of making sure that my college-age children... is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry, there we go, excuse me. I've been a big proponent of making sure that my college-age children know the news and know real news. During this last election, my younger of two, he's a sophomore, just finished his sophomore year in college, came to me with a bunch of propaganda about Kamala. And I had to sit him down and walk him through and say, where'd you find this? Where did this come from? And that, really upset me, but it reminded me of how important it is that local news outlets utilize all the different platforms that you can to present news to younger readers, viewers, our younger audience. And that's why we have our streaming newscasts.
And in different ways. Their eye is caught by something different than straight text.
We created a half-hour video newscast called Banner Streaming Week in Review, but the goal of that wasn't to have that old-fashioned 30-minute block. It's that every 2 minutes we break each story. We put it out on Facebook and Instagram and multiple other platforms. We key it so that you don't have to watch it, so that if you're looking at a TikTok video and you see the words, it's packaging up the truth about what's going on in our community and getting it to the younger audience. I always ask the question, how do you get people to vote against your own best interest? Propaganda, misinformation. And that's what our young people are getting. So it's very, very important that these local media outlets and true journalism is presented in as many platforms for the younger audience as possible. We have to get it in their hands, because without them, we'll continue to see our country, as I view it, go down the drain because of misinformation. I call it, as opposed to journalism, it's influencism. It's creating stories to influence a response. But then you tack to the most emotional part of that story, and then by the time you go around in the back of the story to explain, well, it's not really that, you've already misinformed people. And now often it's actually manipulated intentionally to misinform. So that's...
So I'm reminded, looking at this story, I was reminded of a very well-funded and really well-promoted it was going to be a great new platform just for the phone called Quibi. Do you all remember Quibi?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. So Quibi was absolutely formatted for just to go to this young audience. It was fast. It was, had all of the production resources they needed, and these, great journalists who were, on fire doing it. They had recruited some, and, others they, brought from traditional places, but where they were just coming up. And the thing died in about a year. And the reason it died is because the young people apparently would not go to another platform. So what these people are doing in this piece that you ask us to read are going to the already existing platforms, saying that's what works. If you're already on TikTok, if you're already on Twitch, if you're already on Instagram, now we can present you with the cleverly designed, shortened version of real journalism that will catch your eye and you'll read it. And apparently this is going very well in the way that they did it. So when they say meet the audience where they are, they really mean that. We're just going to go to that platform. And it started because the guy who was one of the founders said, he thought to himself, well, where do I go? I go to Instagram. So let me go to Instagram first, and it's called Rocka News, this new idea of going to these platforms. It's founded by Billy Carney and two friends after the pandemic, after they graduated from college. And so I think unlike Quibi, which couldn't have been more well-funded and couldn't have been better promoted, you just couldn't have told me that wasn't going to work, and it did not. I think this has a real shot, and apparently is doing very well.
I mean, if you think about traditional media outlets like GBH and the Globe, we are developing off-platform strategies, right? I mean, for example, BPR, we're streamed on YouTube, right? At the Globe, we take our stories, which are behind a paywall, and we repackage them. We put videos on Instagram or YouTube, TikTok, to drive. To reach a much younger audience in the hopes that they love the content and then they'll subscribe eventually.
Well, that's what we're doing at GBH. I think these people, Rocka News, are doing one step further. They are taking their package and packaging it in just the way already that they think young people will respond to. So in other words, they start from the foundation of reporting the piece in that format that they have ascertained really works to grab somebody's attention and not for long, as Ron has said.
Yes, and for us, we kind of did the reverse of that because we have a traditional news format and then we repackage it. It seemed brilliant that they start design from that, and it made their success is a reflective of that. I definitely understand why Quibi, though it sounded great, didn't work, because I can't get my kids to do anything I tell them. They have their pattern of how they receive the information, and like you said, Cal, you're going to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so in all of that, where does this fit? So the New York Times, it was reported by CNN today that the New York Times has inked a deal with Amazon to license the content of the Old Gray Lady for AI training, but Amazon is going to put New York Times content on his site. Where does that fit in this using new platforms to get your news out to other people? Does that have a place anywhere in that?
Well, it has a place somewhere. This is really about cash.
It is about cash.
This is about cash.
I'm appalled by the whole story.
So,
but as we're talking about trying to get your information in front of newer eyes, I was wondering if it fits in anywhere, and do feel free to talk about the underlying story as well.
Well, they've licensed their content, and as we've heard in the past, where Amazon used to just take some stuff here and there, and that didn't go over well to the people who had done the original shoe leather work, said, oh no, you're not going to just take our stuff. All right, so they backed off from that, I think, for the most part. And here comes the New York Times saying, we'll license you our content, okay, and this will help you in your getting your AI programs better. Everybody needs to remember that AI just doesn't exist in and of itself. It has to train on something. And part of the issue has been it's training illegally on a lot of people's copyrighted work.
Right, exactly.
So now this is licensed. They have to pay for it. And this, what to me is amazing, is apparently they have access to all the way back to the beginning. That's a lot of access.
That is a lot of
and
access.
a lot of training. And I don't know.
I look at it two ways. AI traditionally is based on whoever programmed it, their internal biases.
Exactly.
So AI often is racist, it's often sexist.
As the New York Times has been.
So on one way, maybe having access to all of the information that might help if you're able to go back and look at all the factual information. Not that everything that the Times put out, as you said, can be biased as well. But I'm very skeptical of AI in general because of the belief that it's neutral when it is 100% not neutral. And it is all about who created it, who programmed it, and what information is fed into it to allow it to learn.
So to add to that, just know then that this is going to be considered the standard. So if this is the standard, understanding that the people who wrote these stories initially, on which this machine is now learning, so they will learn all of those inherited biases that we talk about, will be considered the standard, because this is a huge deal. This is immense.
I mean, but the thing is, like, I'm hoping that the New York Times isn't the sole source. I'm hoping that they'll ink, more deals, so it'll be a little more diverse, and
it doesn't look like it to me from what I'm.
You think it'll be an exclusively
well,
with Amazon?
Said Amazon has. I mean, the Times has said they will talk to other people, and they're willing to, to offer their content, but this seems like such a broad, sweeping plan. If I have just paid you, Amazon, if I'm Amazon and I've just paid you God knows what, because they would not provide a dollar figure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay. Then, no, you're not giving this to everybody and their mother. No. When my goal would be, New York Times, this thinking, when you ask Alexa to pull up the news for the day, it should say, "Hi, this is from the New York Times."
That's right. That's what I would like to happen. I would like to know the source of their news.
Oh, they'll be happy to tell you, because it'll be the only one.
The first thing I thought was, I know that when you write for the Globe, or they own the story, right? Essentially. But nobody ever contemplated when they wrote a story that it would be made available for a platform as big as Amazon for people to read, with or without attribution. There are no details, so there's no devil to be found in them yet. But I'm wondering what happens to the regular reporter, and whether or not out of this huge deal, very lucrative deal, the people who did the work to create the story get any benefit.
Well, I will say this. I don't know what happens to the regular reporter. Maybe, Shirley, you know. But if you've ever signed, and I have, a contract to do a speech or do certain kinds of public-facing events, and they have a contract about what they can use the material, it says at the beginning, before I fix it, before I fix it, it says, I own everything you've ever said in your life. And by the way, it's for the universe, it's for Mars, if it comes to Mars, it's for everything else. And then I have to say, no, we're not doing that. But that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like, the reporters are kind of cut out of it at the moment. But we're kind of cut out of it all the time, I mean, every Google search, right? I mean, no one pays us more. And it's really up to the union of the New York Times to try to negotiate a better deal. Though
they're not mentioned or quoted in the story either.
And it doesn't say if they're going to label it when you ask Alexa if they're going to say. But I would assume, like you, Callie, that they must be branded information. I mean, that would be what the New York Times would want.
Yeah.
If you
But on the other hand, I'm also happy the New York Times gets more money. I mean, that there's a journalism, that a media company gets more money, and they can do better journalism, hire more reporters. So that's good,
I find your optimism refreshing, Shirley.
We're going to see what happens with this. But this is going to be a model. Let me just put that on the table.
I think you're right.
This is going to be a model.
I think you're right. Do we have time for one more thing?
Really quickly.
You wanted to talk about Voice of America.
Oh, I did. I only to say that I am devastated at the loss of Voice of America. And if whichever one of you can do this in 20 seconds, just tell people what Voice of America was and what it has meant for decades and decades in this country. Can you do that in 20 seconds? Can you do it in 30?
You go. I don't know about 20 seconds.
Yeah. Voice of America was America's voice to the world.
Right.
And it was an opportunity for America to tell the good stories about this country and democracy. And I'm really surprised that Trump and his administration, who is make America great again and tell the world how great America is, that they want to, this is the one news outlet that they literally control. They literally could tell them what to say. They're going out of their way to manipulate and control all these other independent news outlets. And the one that is truly fully under their control, they want to dismantle. So it seems to me like they're shooting themselves in the foot. Again, I don't mind that, but I do mind that our message is being minimized around the world, and I think that that's a continuing of the destabilization of the world based on the Trump administration. This is one more
because it's whose
tool.
version of the world they
Right.
want Voice of America to talk about, and the version that they have been talking about for decades and decades does not comport with what the Trump administration intends to do to this country.
I would just add this one sentence, that it came into being around 80 years plus, which we're now celebrating the 80th anniversary for the purpose of responding during World War II, and this is the 80th anniversary of World War II victory. So it's ironic on many levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Well, we're out of time.
Thank you both. It was a pleasure.
And this has been Press Play. We've been speaking with GBH's Callie Crossley. She's host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, Sunday nights on 89.7 at 6 o'clock. You can also hear her Monday Callie commentaries on GBH's Morning Edition, and she's co-host for GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock right here on 89.7, including today's Week in Review from the BPL. So you're probably not going very far, right? You'll be back in like half an hour.
Yes.
And then also Ron Mitchell, editor and publisher of the Bay State Banner, the news outlet centered around Black and Latino communities in Massachusetts. Ron and Callie, it's great to have you guys here. And coming up after a quick break, it's our last segment. It went by so fast,
It did.
Andrea. We're extending a conversation we had earlier today with Dr. KGB. New studies suggest double dipping isn't the level 5 health hazard we once believed it to be. Do you double dip or do you judge? Your calls and texts next. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
RFK Jr. threatens the system of peer-reviewed medical journals.
We're probably going to stop publishing in the Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, and those other journals because they're all corrupt.
I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine will join us to talk about the potential damage to medical research. It's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, offering local, long-distance, office, and piano moving, with 23 locations throughout New England and across the country. More information at gentlegiant.com. And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Outback is committed to keeping your loved ones safe on adventures this spring. Subaru retailer locations at subaruofnewengland.com.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you. Welcome back to BPR. I am Andrea. I was saying goodbye to our previous guests. I'm sorry about that. Welcome back to BPR. I'm Andrea Cabral, and I'm here with Shirley Leung, and we are both in for Jim and Marjorie. We're live at the BPL, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim and Marjorie are going to be back live on Monday. For the rest of the show today, it's Double Dipping and You here on BPR. We talked about this a little while ago with Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett. Double dipping, which is certainly since Seinfeld, but probably long before that, has been considered to be a social faux pas, might not be as much of a health risk as you think, although that might not matter depending on your perception of health risk. But for the sake of society, should we keep the illusion going? 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. Are you a double dipper hearing this for the first time, feeling utterly liberated by the news and ready to terrorize your next game day watch party? Or are you in the mindset of death before double dip, terrified that you'll never be able to enjoy communal queso ever again? Do you have any thoughts on double dip alternatives? Are you, like Shirley, a flippin' dipper, which I had never heard of until she said it today? She'll attempt to explain the insanity of that in a moment. And or do you feel like I do, that it doesn't matter if it's your mouth touching the Cheeto or your grubby little fingers, one dip and you're done? Once again, call or text us, 877-301-8970. And yes, Jim Browdy, we know this is the perfect topic for you. So if you call in, we might put you to the top of the call queue.
All right, flip and dip. That's my assignment to explain. So I flip and dip, which is a form of double dipping, but cleaner. So imagine a potato chip, right? Or potato chip, and there's a dip, like a French onion dip. So I dip on one side of the chip, I take a bite, and then I flip over to the clean side of the chip doesn't have
not
a bite
the part
mark.
that has your bite mark on it.
And then I dip again.
But it still has your grubby little fingers on it because you've been holding it.
Yes, so
it's the difference between whether or not somebody wants germs from your mouth or germs from your hands.
But I haven't touched the dip with my fingers.
No, you didn't. No, but you didn't touch the dip with your when you took it the mouth bite.
Right.
You didn't.
You think the proximity of my grubby fingers next to the dip,
No, I'm
concerns
just thinking
you.
about the number of people that I see gathered around a dip bowl who say, "Can I use your restroom?" and come back and then proceed to dip. Your fingers are not any less of a risk than your mouth in that instance, in my view, anyway.
Well, I thought it was very interesting, this study. It talked about how certain foods are like salsa. Has high acidity, and so there's a lower risk for germs. But something like dips, like a chocolate dip,
a cream dip,
that's a higher propensity for germs. And so I would love to play, of course, a Seinfeld.
Well, I'm with this
clip.
guy. I'm with the Seinfeld guy. So go ahead.
So here's a clip from a Seinfeld episode where George is confronted about double dipping.
What are you doing? Did you just double dip that chip? Excuse me? You double dipped the chip. So? That's like putting your whole mouth right in the dip. Look, from now on, when you take a chip, just take one dip and end it.
Well, I'm sorry, Timmy. But I don't dip that way. You dip the way you want to dip. I'll dip the way I want to dip.
Give me the chip!
Hey!
Okay, so you're gonna give us a call or a text and let us know how you feel about dipping. And I would suggest that I think we're gonna find people who make a distinction between the double dipper, which is essentially one whole chip, say like one, Dorito or whatever, right? So it usually is 2 dips at most, and you're done with the chip.
2 dips.
What about the people who have like a celery stick that's like 5 inches long, and they just keep dipping and dipping and dipping?
That's terrible.
So there are multiple dippers. I think there are gradations. There are tiers of dipping that people might find offensive. So if none of this makes any difference to you at all, let us know that. But if you're one of those people who has a nuanced view of dipping, please call or text us.
So Dr. KGB, not surprisingly, she's not a double dipper. She refuses to that.
A bright, intelligent woman who's very sanitary.
And I guess you're not a double dipper either, right?
I'm not really a dip person per se, so it's not like it comes up a lot. But I do watch people around a dip bowl.
But then there's a lot of advice out there on how to dip more safely.
Well, Lucy in Worcester said the only person I want to swap saliva with is my husband. If I'm at a party, I ain't touching the slobber dip. That's Lucy's term for it, is slobber dip. And I kind of find it difficult to take issue with that.
I mean, certainly if you're sick, right? I mean, I guess the other thing that came up with the study was interesting was that a lot of people, you don't double dip because you're concerned that maybe you'll get COVID or you'll get a cold, right? Or you get the flu. But apparently that's not, you can't
it's minimal, yeah.
You can't get, it's not transferable via food, But the norovirus, and this is what Dr. KGB was talking about, that's a stomach bug. That you can get through food and water and from other humans. So, I mean, the norovirus, when you talk about norovirus, I mean, that is the worst.
No, it is.
So maybe I shouldn't double dip.
Well, you probably shouldn't. I mean, I also think that people don't always know that they're ill. It's not like people who are double dipping are doing it on purpose. But that's the point, is that you have to make decisions for yourself about whether or not you want to trust someone's knowledge about their own health status. And at the end of the day, it's probably just a couple of chips. But some of our texters are weighing in, and they're saying, one texter says, absolutely not. You can't trust what anyone has. Who did this study? Robert Kennedy Jr. Let's use what little funds we have. We'll get better health issues. An anonymous texter from Haverhill says, I was screamed at as a child by a strange adult for double dipping, so I've never done it since. On a second note, you can, she says, you can rotate the chip so the clean end goes into the dip. So you now have a compatriot who's a flip and dipper.
Right. That's right. That's the way to go. Flip and dip. What do we call it?
Flip and dip. Yeah.
Flip and dip. I love it.
So Susan from our collective hometown of Milton is calling. Susan, what do you think about double dipping?
Oh my God! I'm so glad that you're having this show today. Oh, that's right. We're all Miltonites.
That's
okay.
right. Milton strong.
Double dipping. Milton strong. Go. I despise, and it's interesting because when I was a child, I never thought about it, and then as I grew up to be an adult, and then what made it even worse was COVID. I literally monitor people at parties, and I honestly with you, I stay away from the dip because I'm so afraid that someone has double dipped. And I'm a nurse too, so I think, oh God, it's funny how you change over all those years. I would never think like that when I was a kid, and now I don't go near the dip.
Now, I completely understand that. I do tend to watch, first of all, when the dip gets put out, I watch to see how long it's been out. How long have I been at the party?
Yes.
And how has this dip started to turn before anybody even does anything to it? So I do. I'm like Susan. I do watch behavior sometimes at
I don't know if
gatherings.
I could sit there. That seems like watch the dip. That seems so boring.
Oh, no, I'm
Susan.
not just sitting there watching the dip. I just happen to look around a lot when I'm in gatherings. Because people's behavior at parties is always interesting to me.
Well, what sounds like, I guess another advice is that everybody has their own dip, right? Everybody, instead of a communal dip, I guess what you could do is everybody, you get a plate and then you kind of can spoon the dip.
Lots of people
plate.
do that. Then you have your own dip. That's a way of kind of being social and still getting cleanliness.
But then you need instructions though. You need to tell people, do not use this as a communal dip, right? You need to tell people, don't dip in the dip.
Maybe a set of dip rules, which you can put on the table and take to the table where people are having.
You would need
it's getting
that.
way too complicated. Danielle from Maynard, how do you feel about double dipping?
I mean, honestly, personal experience-wise, I'm fine with it, but I was working at a very fancy Hyatt hotel, and there was past hors d'oeuvres, and I was coming around with them, and this older gentleman dipped his egg roll or whatever it is and took a bite and then went to dip again. And I said, I'm sorry, sir, there's hundreds of people dipping in here. You can't double dip here. And he looked a little offended. And then as soon as I turned my back and started to walk away, he jumped over and double dipped again real quick. And I had to go and get a new dipping sauce because, obviously I'm not going to pass that around to all these other people.
See, a total scofflaw, a total rogue double dipper. He's an aggressive dipper and ought never to be invited to any event ever again. And Danielle, you get to be applauded for keeping sanitation top of mind for all of the other guests there.
Well, clearly this fancy hotel needed a little sign.
That's no double dipping. On each tray, no double dipping.
That's
people
what
would
needs
do
to
it
happen.
anyway. But I give her credit. I mean, that's not an easy thing to say to a guest. You don't know who the guest is, but the fact that he rogue dipped, when he thought she wasn't looking is appalling.
So we have more texters coming in, more texts. Let's see. Shara from Lynn. She doesn't like what I'm doing. She said the flip. OMG, the flip and dip is even worse because most people's dirty little hands are even dirtier than their little nasty mouths. This is Andrea Cabral's
Shara,
theory.
you are so right.
No way, no double dipping, no flipping dipping.
And I will say this, just to give you your due, Shirley, we appreciate that you made the effort, but on behalf of myself and Shara, it's just not cutting it. The flip and dip just isn't covering it. Another one of our anonymous texters said, so shaking someone's grubby little hand is bacteria safe as opposed to Shirley doing the flip dip? Do you have any idea of the enormous amount of bacteria we encounter every second just sitting still? Germaphobes around the state who may be listening to the show are sitting trembling right now because all we're talking about is how disgusting and grubby we are.
Well, but one of the things, I stopped shaking hands.
Just period? Just
altogether? I try to avoid shaking hands, because I'm a business columnist. You're always shaking hands at business events, and I fist bump because it's I actually started this before COVID because, during winter flu season, so I stopped shaking hands, and now I just do fist bumps, because it's true. I mean, our hands are very dirty, and it's very easy to pass on germs.
Right. Susan from Granville, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
I wanted to call in. I was laughing listening to this because I have a longtime friend who always tells me she doesn't double dip, that she turns it around and whatnot, and yet every time I'm with her, I see her double dip.
Wait, is it a flip and dip? Is it a flip and dip or a true double dip?
No, it's a true double dip. She doesn't.
You need to take a photo next time, Susan. Photographic evidence, right?
She also licks her fingers when she's cooking.
Oh, no, that's terrible.
Oh, no, that is awful.
Susan, what's your friend's name? Should we out her?
No.
What's your friend's name?
No.
Her name is Kristen. She's probably not listening. She lives in Brattleboro.
Kirsten, watch out for Kirsten, the double dipper.
Well, Kirsten, you've been outed. There'll be no more double dipping for you. One of our texters said, I wouldn't consider myself, thank you for your call, by the way, Susan. One of our texters said, I wouldn't consider myself OCD, but I wouldn't even double dip my own chip. Now that is someone who is very, very careful about even their own germs. Generally, this applies to tips that may be going back into the fridge and enjoyed later. It just seems to me that as though whatever lovely bacteria now lives inside will continue to grow.
Oh, here's another good point. When we're going to the movie theater, this is for anonymous texter, double dip, what about a popcorn bowl? Where many hands dive into it over and over. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I really don't like the whole, buy your own popcorn. I know it's expensive. Or ask for an empty bag and I'll give you half of mine, but don't stick your hand into my popcorn over and over and over again. Because I can actually hear you, even if it's dark and I can't see you, licking the salt off your fingers between each dip.
All right, here's another good anonymous texter. Never mind the chips/dips. What about blowing and spitting over the birthday cake as one blows out the candles? That's good.
No, that people have been doing that for years. I've never understood why people tolerate that whole. Yeah.
So was it Mitt Romney? I don't think he blows out candles, right? Is that right? Mitt Romney had some phobia of blowing out candles, and I just remember there were videos. Was it him?
Was it a sanitation-based phobia?
Yeah, no. I don't think he blew out. He did something to avoid spitting on cakes. He had a thing. He did something different he did something. He
blew them out one by one.
Does that make it worse? Doesn't blowing out? Oh yeah, Romney blew out candles one by. That would make it worse. That makes it worse. Oh, that's disgusting.
He gets a new intake of breath with each one.
Right, exactly. That's terrible. All right, let's talk to Bobby from New Hampshire.
Hi, Bobby.
Hi. Long time, first time, and I have no problem with double dipping or most of that kind of stuff. I've been to 35 countries, never been sick overseas, and I think it's because we need a little germs.
Oh, I like that.
Need to build up that immunity, huh?
I like that. That's pretty good.
So is there any type of communal eating behavior that you will not tolerate, Bobby?
I haven't run into one. This is probably going to terrify all my friends.
Well, she's never been sick, so that speaks for itself.
Well, and I mean, when I go out with my family, I'm Chinese and Chinese American, and of course, the way the Chinese eat, we all eat family style, right? And so we're all of us are constantly using our chopsticks to grab food, and so that is a form of double dipping, right? That we're using our chopsticks into a supposedly clean plate of food over and over again. But that's why some relatives, they ask for kind of the common serving spoons or common chopsticks for each dish to cut down on germs.
Right. Judith from Framingham suggests the following, that there be a bowl for double dippers and a different bowl for single dippers only.
Oh.
So that you can exercise your right to double dip, but not infringe upon the right of a single dipper to not want to be anywhere near you when you do it.
But that only works if you have the right signage, right? It all comes.
You need signage. You also need a host that is incredibly tolerant of putting out 2 bowls of dip and making sure the entire time that they don't get mixed up. So another texter says, solution, just break the chip in half or cut whatever and then dip each half to cover the chip. Hosts can serve smaller pieces to dip, so each one is a mouthful. I think we're really kind of making it hard on these hosts. People are going to stop having gatherings altogether.
All right, so Jay in Brighton is thinking about Jim. He doesn't even think Jim is a double dipper. He thinks Jim Browdy is definitely a multiple dipper.
I suspect that too.
He's a multiple dipper on the off chance that he can scare others away so he can have all the dip.
I think Jay knows what he's talking
to himself.
about.
I think that's right. I can see that.
I think it's written all over his face. Kathy from Medford, what do you think about double dipping?
Well, I'm thinking more of the use of gloves when people handle food.
Yeah.
Because they wear that glove just like it's their hand, and they use it the whole time and never think that they're taking the money, they're taking your cards.
That's right.
And they don't ever change that glove. And I'm just like, don't you get it? You know, and they don't get it. And I've asked a few of them, why do you wear that glove? And then they say, well, it's easier with this. And then they show me the instrument that they should be using. But they go, that's difficult to do. And I said, but look at what you're doing with that dirty glove. So it's like double dipping to me. Just take a little piece of those fancy papers that they have for when you're handling food and touch the food that way instead of wearing those gloves that they wear. They never change. That's what my thought is.
I've seen people use hand sanitizer on the glove. Like they use the gloves, but then they sanitize.
Kathy, I thought you were going to say everybody, when you go to a party, everybody has to wear gloves. And so if you're going to dip, you got to wear a glove. Everybody gets their own plastic gloves before you dip. So we need instructions. We need everybody has gloves.
Yeah.
You know,
no one's going to do any of this. People are just going to still continue to do whatever it is that they've been doing. They've been doing it for all of these centuries, and you know, it's worked for most people. So I guess it's not that as big a problem.
Oh, so we have 2 marijuana questions.
We do.
Maybe Andrea, you should take these.
Okay. So what are the 2? Where are they?
Wait, maybe I'm.
Communal weed smokers. What Beaver? Somebody from Beaver. The person's name is Beaver. They're from Forge Village, Massachusetts. Communal weed smokers don't mind double dipping. They know where their mouth has been. And then Don in Hudson said, for a generation that grew up sharing joints, the fear of double dipping is ludicrous.
It's true.
No, that's where you actually get the wet end of something. It's the same as if you share a cigarette. So people haven't minded that for years and years and years. So those are 2 very good points.
Has anyone studied that? Maybe the heat from the smoke and the marijuana maybe reduces the germs. Maybe it's safe.
I'm sure that someone's come up with a theory like that holds absolutely no water. Another one of our texters said, here's an easy solution. Squirt a little Purell into the dip. You can thank me later.
All right, so here's another one. Anonymous texter. I don't understand why people have to dip at all. I always serve my dip in a little plate with my chips, and then I can double dip all I want. That is really the best solution.
Yeah.
But you do need a sign again.
No, I think if you're sensitive to it, or you've got guests that have said something, sure, you're going to have to tell them, you know, how to do it and where to do it, and then sit there and watch them to make sure that they pay attention. Emma in Pepperell says, may I suggest the spatula dip? I've never heard of this.
What?
You take 2 of the veg or chip, you make 1 large dip in the dip, and then you spread the dip on both items with the initial veg or chip. The veg or chips are well coated, and you need to I need a Venn diagram for this. I'm not sure what that looks like.
But you need a strong chip. Right?
Well, she also says veg, so I guess she's talking about carrot sticks and celery and stuff like that.
Oh, right. So you take
but I can't. I'm having trouble visualizing.
Well, it really works well with the celery. If if you have that little, you can use the celery almost like.
Oh, so you make it the canoe.
Yeah,
the celery canoe.
Do that. You could do that.
Yeah, and you just dip the whole thing, and then you just keep taking. But I can't believe that we're like so in the weeds around double dipping.
I love this text. Anonymous texter. My roommate licks the dip and sits naked on the couch, but she's a dog. That's pretty good.
That is adorable. That is pretty cute. And people kind of don't really mind that. The same people that probably don't like humans double dipping probably don't have a problem with the dog in the dip. I certainly wouldn't.
All right, let's hear from Bonnie from Salem.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hey guys, good afternoon, good morning, and have a great weekend.
You too.
I think the hostess of any, you're welcome. I think the hostess of any event or party should provide vessels or cups or plates for all the guests so they could take their own dip in their own plate. Then they wouldn't have to worry about double dipping.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, I've seen it both ways, and I do think people kind of do appreciate, or at least a spoon. If you've got a large thing of dip, a spoon and individual plates so that people can,
But Andrew, there's a problem with that.
Why?
The environment. I guess. I mean, what if they're all that waste?
What are you wasting?
I mean, no. If it's all these little paper cups, it would have to be, like, I don't know, in a plate or something, or glass or something.
Well, you can recycle them if they're paper cups.
I don't know.
Well, we have somebody here now that I'm dying to get his position on double dipping. Jared, who I know to be a fairly fastidious, with certain lapses, a fairly fastidious gentleman. Talking about double dipping a chip.
We gotta guess. We gotta guess what he is. He does not strike me as a double dipper.
I do a little bit of what you were talking about, where you take the chip and then you the flip and dip.
Yeah,
which Jamie was just saying is not so sociable to do that because you've still touched the chip, but that's less than saliva.
No, Andrea doesn't like the flip and dip.
You don't like the flip and dip?
I'm not a fan of any of the
but you're
multiple
not a fan
dipping
of dips.
endeavors.
You're not a fan of dips,
yeah,
period.
Right. So
You're
maybe it's just my
anti-dips.
bias against dips generally. I
Yes.
don't want anybody enjoying themselves.
Yes,
I don't know.
exactly.
Well, that's a whole other
I
take.
could see you standing watching somebody who
Like the dip police?
Who dips several
Yes.
times like Jim Browning,
Yes,
right?
the dip
and getting that
police.
look on your face like, I'm appalled by this.
Yes,
just
the
appalling.
dip police.
Well, then I would have to hear the crunching, so that's why I'm nowhere near the hors d'oeuvre table anyway. Or you can go to the pop-up bagel store where you grip, rip, and dip. Have you heard about this?
no.
Yeah, we had them on the Culture Show. It's this fantastic. I think they're in Cambridge now too. They're in the Seaport District. It's a pop-up bagel place. Really fantastic bagels.
Oh, I've heard of the place.
And it's grip, rip, and dip.
Yeah.
Wait, what is that?
Really?
Wait, that's that. Wait, what do you mean grip it? What are you saying?
You
grip it?
you grip the bagel, rip it, and then dip it in
dip
the.
the
I have
cream
never said
cheese.
the word dip so many times in 45
Right.
seconds
I
as I
know.
have being on with you both.
All right, Jared.
Well, I used to say it a lot, but it used to have a really bad word after it. So all the time.
I followed you.
I used to say it all the time. What's happening on the Culture Show? What do we get to look forward to?
So we're going to be talking about the groundbreaking of the Holocaust Museum Boston, which happened yesterday, and
I
why
didn't know this.
this is a very significant
Wow.
moment for this to be opening in the city, because of course everything that we're facing in the world, and this is ongoing. So we'll talk about that. We will talk about it's kind of a good story that not kind of, it is a good story that in this moment where so many books were removed from the Naval Academy, a lot of the books are coming back. We'll talk about that.
Oh,
and
wow.
then, do you both know what the Labubu is?
No.
No.
Neither of you know.
No.
Yeah, Labubus are Jamie is shaking his head over there. They are taking the world by storm. They're these little elfin monsters that are going for hundreds of dollars now, and you click it to your purse or your briefcase or something, and
It's like the 2025 Beanie Baby thing?
exactly. That's exactly what I
Is
feel
it a
like.
plushie? A little
It's a little plushie. Yep.
Oh,
Dua
really?
Lipa
What does it
has
do?
one. Rihanna has one.
How much do they cost?
Hundreds of dollars now because
Really?
they've become so popular because all the celebrities
What does it
have them.
do?
Well, I can't tell you
For that
everything.
amount of money, it should wash my car.
Yeah, well, okay. Yep, you'll have to tune into the Culture
Really?
Show
Okay.
at
I'm
2
gonna be
to find
listening to
out.
that.
And then we'll talk about the dueling divas. I know Andrea will love this. Patty Lupone and Audra McDonald apparently have a
Ooh.
long simmering feud. So we'll
No.
talk about the divide between the Tony Titans of theater.
This I did not know about. I love Audra McDonald.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who just thinks that the sun rises and sets on her.
Yeah, well, I just
Yeah.
saw her in Gypsy, as you know, and she was
Yes.
fantastic.
She is. She's fabulous.
Yeah.
Great actress, great singer, amazing.
She is.
Where's the Holocaust Museum? Where's the groundbreaking? Where's it going to be?
It's going to be on Tremont Street, pretty close to, right across from Park Street Station, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They got special dispensation to take the building down that was there, and so we'll talk about why it's so, what they're doing architecturally that makes it even more resonant.
Great. Well,
That's excellent.
that's all the time
Good
we
to see
have.
you,
We're going to see Jared in a few more minutes. But thanks for listening to another edition of BPR, and thanks to everyone who came down to see the show at the BPL. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tune in Monday. Jim and Marjorie are back, and we'll find out if they're double dippers. We talk with the NAACP's Michael Curry, UN aid worker Olga Cherevka, Mexico, live from Casa, a little-known business columnist by the name of Shirley Leung.
That would be you.
That would
Yeah.
be me. She's coming back Monday. And Food Authority Corby Comer. Our crew today, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Taya Modelis, Juan Jose Catania. Thanks to the Newsfeed Cafe and the Lennox Hotel across the street. Oh, and one more, Angelica Morero. Sorry, Angelica.
And before we go, I've got two quick announcements. First, there's a great event this Sunday, June 1st at 2 p.m., a free celebration with Fenway Studios, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum staff artists, and the Boston Red Sox. It'll feature the work of 25 talented ISGM staff artists exhibited at the Fenway Studios, 30 Ipswich Street. For more details, visit friendsoffenwaystudios.org.
Also, I want to remind everyone that starting on Monday, the 11 to 12 o'clock hour, BR will also be heard in Western Massachusetts on 88.5.
I think we're done.
All right.
All right. I'm Andrea
Culture
Cabral,
Show.
and that was Shirley Leung. Have a great weekend.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise Software Platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. Whether it's fried, roasted, or stewed, GBH has some glorious food with all the seasonings. Satisfy your craving by downloading the PBS app and stream your favorite cooking shows anytime you need.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org.